Chapter 1145. On the 8th day, other than Professor André, the other 4 subjects started to bleed profusely. We had no choice but to send them to the infirmary for resuscitation. On the 9th day, Professor André, who was left in the cell, started to use his own excrement to draw some strange symbols and words that we could not recognize on the wall. He wrote a lot. When I filed this record today, he had almost covered the entire wall with his excrement. The record ended there. There was nothing about the 10th day. Obviously, at that moment, Feng Bujue was experiencing the 10th day 1 hour later. As I expected, there is no exit here. Feng Bujue came to another corner of the map. As expected, he ran into a dead end. Brother Feng, what should we do now? Igor had a worried look on his face. We've gone through all 4 sides and corners of this floor, but there's no exit. Just as Igor said, they had already walked a full circle around the edge of this floor. Along the way, the 2 ran into 3 mutants from the sleep experiment. Speaking of which, the 3 of them were quite pitiful. When they ran into Brother Ju, they thought they had run into their own kind, so they were not on guard. In the end, they were killed by someone. They died with a grievance. There has to be an exit. After giving it some thought, Feng Bujue said, but someone has purposely hidden it. The someone that he was referring to was naturally the people from the Golden Foundation. When they ran into the first nameless mutant, Feng Bujue noticed that the monster's memory had been corrected. He could still remember all kinds of information, but he could not remember where the exit was. Later, the same thing happened to Brother Barefoot. He could use his own coordinates to deduce the location of the archive room, but he could not remember where the exit was. This kind of collective, specific memory loss was obviously caused by some kind of interference from the higher dimension. Brother Ju initially suspected that this was the doing of the system, but after giving it some thought, he did not think so. Yes, the system of Thriller Paradise would do something like this, but the method of the system was usually clever and hidden. It would not give off such an obvious feeling of abruptness. Later, when Feng Bujue connected it to the sandbox theory, he understood. The people who made the interference and the people who created this simple sandbox were the same group of people. If one had to make an analogy, the system was like a good writer. He could quietly push forward the plot while fixing the small bugs that he accidentally left behind. The Golden Foundation was like a bad reality show director. They would purposely show what they wanted to do, and make the audience feel fake and helpless. You mean? After hearing what Brother Ju said, Igor asked. He thought for a full 10 seconds before asking, The exit is disguised, so that we can't see it? Ha, a bunch of people who can't even deal with the details of the environment, to have them disguise the exit. That is a bit too much. Feng Bujue laughed. I believe the actual situation is. As he spoke, he turned to look down the corridor. The exit here is not on the 4 sides but somewhere in the middle of this floor. This. Igor thought about it and then slapped his forehead. You're right. This place is underground, and the exit is facing upward. In other words, the ceiling is the edge. I believe. Feng Bujue picked up where Igor left off. The exit here is most likely something like an elevator. He shrugged. The reason we can't find the exit is actually very simple. It's because the signs in the environment have all disappeared. If those signs were still there, we would have been able to reach the exit easily. He paused. Of course, if the memories of Niguli and the rest were not blocked by those people, we would have been able to leave easily as well. Just as Brother Ju said that, suddenly, buzz buzz buzz, there was a burst of buzzing sounds. Waves of formless energy surged in from all directions, crisscrossing and shuttling back and forth. What are they going to do? Feng Bujue stared with his dead fish eyes and muttered, Could it be that they want to? Whoosh! In an instant, the wind from the punch interrupted Brother Ju's train of thought. The person who launched the sudden attack was none other than Igor. Humph! Feng Bujue snorted coldly and raised his arm to block the heavy punch that was aimed at his face. However, although he protected his head, the bones of his forearm still broke under the heavy pressure. "You're not going to hide anymore, are you?" Feng Bujue's words were not directed at Igor, but at the people who were watching. On the other hand, Igor took advantage of the situation to pursue and attack. At this moment, the burly Soviet man was like a different person from before. He was originally honest and simple, but in the blink of an eye, he had become a cold-faced and ruthless fighting machine. "Ah, never mind." Feng Bujue fought and retreated, his tone as relaxed as before. "No matter how you deal with it, it's all the same to me." Buzz, buzz, buzz. The buzzing sound became more and more rapid, and all the scenery was distorted, making people dizzy. Igor, like the surrounding scenery, became like a reflection in the water. His speed was also affected as a result. He became slower and slower. "Obviously, your skills are not up to standard, but you still want to interfere too much, and this is the result." Feng Bujue looked at the distorted things around him and commented calmly. After 6 or 7 seconds, Brother Ju's arm had completed its self-healing. Then, he used his speed advantage to get away from Igor. At the same time, he shouted to the empty space in the corridor, "Do you think you can stay out of this and play with me like an experimental specimen?" He smiled. "Haha, let's wait and see." Even though the space was distorted quite severely, it could not stop Feng Bujue's actions. 5 minutes later, Brother Ju went all the way back to the door of the archives room. Then, in a sense, this script is quite interesting. Feng Bujue had his back to the door of the archives room. He sorted out his memory a little and then said, "Instead of saying that the system gave me a difficult problem, it's better to say that it's a three-way game between me, the system, and the Foundation." As he spoke, he took out the stack of documents from his arms. "The system wants me to crack this sandbox and go out to find trouble with the Foundation, but it has to try its best to ensure that the inherent difficulty and principles of the nightmare script are not broken. The Foundation wants to observe me and interfere with me, but it has to prevent me from noticing their existence." Feng Bujue said in his heart, however, "Just noticing the existence of the Foundation can't be considered as cracking the worldview. At this stage, the system should be limiting me. I have to get out of here to complete the cracking." While thinking, Feng Bujue quickly reorganized the documents in his hand into the state when he first took them out, and the order was exactly the same. Now, the Foundation has used this emergency measure to show that they have given up on observing me, and their goal has changed to stopping me from getting out. Feng Bujue's train of thought had been straightened out, and it was getting clearer. "This change has given me a piece of information, and that is, from the perspective of the people at the Golden Foundation, the thing that can help me get out has already fallen into my hands." At that moment, Feng Bujue flipped through the documents again. From beginning to end, he used extremely fast speed to scan through all the content. "It can be seen that I have misunderstood the meaning of these documents from the beginning." This time, after Brother Ju flipped through the documents, he smiled. "Those documents that look very funny and those documents that I thought were useful and related to the sleep experiment are essentially the same thing. Because my thinking is still limited to the so-called main story and plot, I subconsciously categorized these documents." He shook his head. "But in fact, I only need to use the purest puzzle-solving method to treat these 6 documents as the same set of fragments that record information." With that in mind, more than 10 different pieces of information flashed before Brother Ju's eyes. Each piece of information was like a long and thin spider web, and in the end, they joined together to form a large and well-organized web. Miliawa. Russian. Turn left. The first 5 days. No abnormalities. Keep moving forward. 5 intersections. The 6th day. The situation took a sharp turn. Turn. Where should I turn? Feng Bujue thought as he walked. When he reached this point, he stopped and looked to the left and right. In the next few days, the prisoners will sit back to back. He repeated this sentence and noticed that there were 2 doors facing each other on the right, but there were none on the left. So that's how it is. After confirming the direction, Brother Ju continued to move forward. The 9th day. 4 prisoners. 2 of them. Until the 14th day. The next set of information was slightly more difficult. He had to go to 3 different intersections to find the keywords in the 4th and 2nd, which were the number and arrangement of the doors. Then, he had to walk in the correct direction for a distance of 14 intersections. After deciphering all the hints in the first 2 documents, Feng Bujue came to the door of a room. He tried the metal door of the room, and the voice message he received was, "Old metal door. The lock is rusty, but it seems that it can be opened with brute force." With this sentence, Brother Ju was relieved. Now, he didn't need help from others. He could kick the door open with a casual kick. Thus, Brother Ju entered the room without any problems and found a key in the room. The appearance of this item was the verification of his previous series of deductions. After Feng Bujue put the key in his pocket, he entered the next stage of the deduction. Beginning the second experiment. Beginning the second part of the journey. The experimental specimens and methods used in this experiment will be adjusted so that we can obtain more diverse data. In other words, for this part, a new rule will be adopted. It will be more complicated than the first part. From the perspective of puzzle solving, every sentence in the experiment report could be interpreted as meaningful information. 15 death row prisoners ranging from 30 to 60 years old. 15. 30 to 60 years old. Odd and even numbers? Group 1, 5. Same as the first time. Group 2, 3, 3, 4, 2 each. 5, 6, and 7, 1 each. The puzzle this time was more complicated than the first part. Feng Bujue thought for a while. Although he had some hypotheses, he couldn't solve them. But, he quickly realized that since the first part of the puzzle was made up of 2 documents, then the second part might need to be read by combining the 2 documents. Chapter 1146. When he opened the metal door, he was greeted by a room about 20 square meters in size. The lights in the room were on, so it was easy to see what was in the room. Obviously, this was a prison cell used for experiments. Also, the walls of the cell were filled with strange symbols and words. Needless to say, everyone should have guessed that this was the cell where Professor Andre was imprisoned during the 3rd sleep experiment. The words on the wall were basically written with his excrement. The conditions of the prisoners are not bad. When Feng Bujue walked into the room, he muttered, "They even eat whole wheat bread." Normally, when a person entered a room filled with the stench of excrement, even if they did not vomit, they would at least frown and cover their nose. However, when Feng Bujue came in, he smelled the air and guessed the food of the experimental subject from the smell. Professor Andre's hemorrhoids seemed to be quite serious. After Feng Bujue entered the room, he glanced around and noticed that among the shit-colored words, there were many dark red words. Looks like it's happening almost every day. Even though he was complaining, he did not forget the important thing. From the moment he entered the room, he had already started to think about the 3rd set of hints. Anti-tank dog, sacrifice, a sacrifice that refuses to be sacrificed or run back. For the 3rd experiment, the first 6 days were basically the same as the previous 2 experiments, no changes. On the 7th day, pacing back and forth, with this in mind, Feng Bujue looked at the contents on the surrounding walls. "Oh, here it is," Brother Ju said as he looked at the wall facing the door. The 7th line of words on the wall had the same symbol at the beginning and the end. The 2 symbols were drawn with excrement that was stained with blood. Then, on the 8th day, for people other than the professor, bleeding, sent to the infirmary. And on the 9th day archived. This time, Brother Jew thought for a full 5 minutes before he turned around and left the room. Phew! It was not until he left the room that he realized, I was too deep in thought. I ended up standing in a place filled with the smell of excrement for a long time. Even Brother Jew had his moments of error. However, this kind of mistake would not cause any substantial losses. 15 minutes later, Feng Bujue returned to the gravity induction gate. Now Brother Jew knew very well that after entering this door, the area that led to Lab Room 1 was a corridor that spiraled inwards like a mosquito coil. However, this corridor did not curve inwards but curved inwards at a right angle. In the entire map, the terrain of this area was unique. The corridors in the other areas were all crisscrossed and orderly, extending all the way to the edge of the map. Only this place had a unique design. I thought the document would point to the exit. Looks like I was wrong again. When Feng Bujue was still quite a distance away from the gate, he saw a row of dark figures at the junction. There were 7 people standing there. 6 of them were mutants from the sleep experiment and ritual transformation, and the remaining one was Igor. In this sandbox with no markings or details, the system used all the resources that it could use related to the main plot to create a map that only exists in my mind. There were so many hostile NPCs in his sight, but Brother Jew was still unmoved. He continued to think. With limited resources, the system converted the method to break out of this sandbox into various information and transmitted it to me. He was getting closer to the figures, and his footsteps were getting faster. From the beginning, the system's main goal was not to get me out of the scenario, but to get me out of the sandbox. He took the opportunity to stretch out his hands from his pockets and leaned forward, ready to fight. After the Foundation saw through this, they gave up on observation and adopted this strategy. Hidden mission completed. Unraveling worldview. SCP Observation Plan. At that moment, 2 consecutive voice notifications were sent into Feng Bujue's ears. At the same time, the group of figures in front of him moved. Once they moved, Feng Bujue realized something. They know how to apply what they've learned. He instantly determined that the enemies in front of him had all become hybrid mutants like him. Obviously, after the Foundation's observers saw what Brother Jew did, they followed suit. They used the remaining sleep experiment mutants to carry out the ritual transformation on Igor, and then injected those mutants with VNO9. In this way, these monsters all became hybrid mutants like Brother Jew. As for their intelligence and rationality, it did not matter. After all, the Foundation had used forced intervention to directly control the actions of these NPC monsters. As the last line of defense against Feng Bujue, they only needed to have powerful combat ability and combat instinct. Bang 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 bang. It was too late to say the least. As the 2 sides clashed, Brother Jew suddenly stopped and flipped backward. The monsters could not stop their momentum, and following several loud bangs, they collided with each other. Some knocked into each other, and some slammed into the walls on both sides of the corridor. With that, the monster's first charge ended in a wretched state, swaying left and right. Very good. This is a bit challenging. At this time, Feng Bujue had already tossed away his toolbox because he had the power to crush the enemy's skull with his bare hands. However, he was now fighting 1 against 7, and the individual strength of the 7 opponents was not much different from his. In this situation, to win, it was still difficult. He had to rely on combat experience and skills. Fortunately, in this regard, Brother Jew had a great advantage. Although the monsters attacked fiercely and aggressively, Feng Bujue did not have a significant advantage in terms of speed. He was still able to dodge left and right with ease. If one had to make an analogy, this scene was like a fighting game. A group of very honest and aggressive AIs were ganging up on an expert character. I didn't expect. After fighting for a while, Feng Bujue smiled and said to himself, I can't believe I have such a day." At this moment, he could not help but recall the situation when he first met Blade Runner. The difference in physical skills was not big, and Brother Jew had a greater advantage in terms of raw strength. However, before Brother Jew obtained the psionic weapon, he was still suppressed by the other side. And now, Fong Bujua himself had become the side with better combat skills. When he saw the group of monsters rushing over like headless flies, with movements and attack patterns that he could see through at a glance, he finally experienced the feeling of a master beating a noob. Click! After fighting for 30 seconds, Fong Bujua saw an opportunity and smashed the back of the head of a mutant with a serpentine strike with his right hand, successfully killing one of them. As the number of monsters decreased, it became easier for Brother Jew to kill them. The second opportunity came 20 seconds later. Fong Bujue used a simple feint to trick two mutants into stumbling into each other. Then, he spread his arms and easily took their lives. In this way, after 3 minutes of fighting, there was only one left among the 7 opponents, and that one was Igor. Just as Fong Bujue was about to decisively finish him off, suddenly buzz buzz buzz. The buzzing sound rang out again, and the waves of invisible fluctuations came from all directions once more. Fong Bujue, are you really going to kill Igor? The next second, a woman's voice rang out. Her voice sounded like it came from a faraway place. The timbre was obviously produced by some kind of device, and it was slightly distorted. He is just an innocent experiment subject, and he is your partner who has helped you survive. Humph, don't you think it's funny to say something like that? Hearing that, Fong Bujua laughed coldly. The real Igor died in 1949, didn't he? He said as he fought. He died in an underground research institute and became the sacrifice of an experiment. He paused for a moment. What I'm facing now is just an image in a simulated world. Whether he's dead or alive, when you close this crude mirror world, he'll disappear. Until you open the next parallel universe, there will be another Igor, another Nicholas, another Andre. When he finished, Fong Bujue bounced off the wall and circled behind Igor. He followed up with a sweeping kick and shattered the man's head. Save it! The one who is talking to me! Almost at the same time Brother Jew saw the mission, the mirror in front of him shattered. Ping ling 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 ling. A series of clear and crisp sounds of glass shattering suddenly rang out, and continued to spread out. Faced with this scene, Fong Bujue did not even blink, and let the fragments of the mirror fly towards him. As a result, the fragments were all invisible projections, and they passed through his body without causing any damage at all. What is this? It shouldn't be a physical facility, right? Fong Bujue looked at the dark space behind the mirror and whispered. Ping ling 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 ling. On the other hand, the shattering sound did not subside, and it seemed like it would never end. Because it was not only the mirror that shattered, but the entire space. The cracks on the mirror extended out and spread to the walls, the ceiling, and even the ground within Fong Bujue's sight. Everything soon shattered. The layers on the surface turned into untouchable fragments that scattered and disappeared, and the dark space at the bottom had no light source. Brother Jew soon could not see anything. Then there was silence and darkness, no sound, no shadow. However, this was not the door to the void. At least Fong Bujue could still hear his own breathing and heartbeat, and he did not feel like his mind was being eroded. After a few seconds, finally, clang, clang. There was the muffled sound of metal being pulled and the obvious sound of an air pressure valve releasing. Then, in front of Fong Bujue, there was a strong light. Chapter 1147. Fong Bujue did not hesitate. He walked several meters toward the light source and stepped into a wide and bright space. The moment he left the sandbox, another system announcement appeared in his ears. Your character restrictions have been removed. Brother Jew had played many scenarios with limited abilities, but this was the first time he had heard this kind of notification in the middle of a game. It looked like the system really wanted him to deal with the Golden Foundation. This also proved that the Golden Foundation in this dimension was very powerful. Their interference had caused the system to be unable to operate normally. Therefore, the system had sent a demon who could break through the sandbox to deal with the Golden Foundation head-on. Stop right there. Feng Bujue's eyes had just gotten used to the light around him when he heard a shout. As expected, once he stepped into the space, he was targeted by more than 10 weapons. Brother Ju looked toward the source of the voice and saw the group of fully armed commandos. He quickly found the speaker among the crowd. Even though they were all in the same attire and had helmets to cover their faces, the speaker had an additional epaulette on his shoulder. The gun he used was also slightly different from the other commandos. With a closer look, it was not hard to guess that he was the leader of this commando team. Raise your hands and put them behind your head. 2 seconds later, the captain shouted out another instruction. Humph! Hearing that, Feng Bujue scoffed coldly. Then, he raised his hands and placed them behind his head as instructed. Now don't move. Seeing how cooperative Brother Ju was, the leader did not waste time and followed the standard procedure. Not long after that, 2 commandos came forward to handcuff Feng Bujue under the order of their leader. Oh, this is the first time I've seen something like this. After Brother Ju was handcuffed, he immediately turned around to look at his wrists. He was a little curious about the handcuffs that were cuffing him because it was undoubtedly a new product made by future technology. The material used is definitely not metal. It feels like some kind of nanomaterial. Feng Bujue thought to himself. After the handcuffs are put on, they will automatically adjust according to the thickness of the person's wrist, and tightly secure the hands. He tried to struggle a few more times. The material combines the dual advantages of toughness and firmness. It completely seals the thumb dislocation method and, even if the handcuffed person has the tools, he won't be able to bend his wrist to the right angle to open the lock. While Brother Ju was studying the handcuffs, the commando captain was talking into the communicator on his shoulder. Even though Feng Bujue didn't hear it with his own ears, he could guess that the other party's line was something along the lines of, "Target subdued, requesting further instructions. Take him to containment room 15 first." Sure enough, 10 seconds later, the captain completed the communication and gave the order. "Let's go." After the commandos who were responsible for escorting Brother Ju received the order, they waved the guns in their hands and urged him to move forward. Feng Bujue still maintained his silence. He turned back to look at the door that he had just stepped out from and then glanced at the dark space behind the door. Then, he followed the instructions of the commandos and started walking. The guns in their hands appeared to be energy weapons. As he walked, he thought to himself, "Have I come to a world where bullets have been eliminated?" 15 minutes later, Feng Bujue was escorted into a room. After the commandos chased him into the room, the door automatically closed. Different from the environment in the previous scenario where the walls were made of cement, the base that he was in now was filled with metal products. Not only the door, even the room itself was made of an alloy that Feng Bujue could not identify. Other than that, based on the sound of the air valve when the door closed, the air pressure and oxygen content in the room were all controllable. This is not going to be easy. After Feng Bujue entered the containment room, the first thing he did was to carefully observe the 20 square meters space around him. In the end, he realized that the 6 sides of the room were impeccable. Even the light strips embedded in the walls were seamlessly embedded into the walls. Has the technology reached a level where surveillance and air pressure control devices can be hidden inside the walls? With that in mind, Brother Ju turned his gaze to the only door in the containment room. When I opened and closed the door earlier, the people escorting me did not do anything, and there is no keyhole or control panel inside or outside the door. This means that the door is also remote-controlled. Buzz buzz buzz. Just as Feng Bujue was thinking, a buzzing sound suddenly appeared. Following that buzzing sound, the wall on the side of the room became like a giant LCD screen, and an image appeared. In the image was a beautiful woman wearing a white coat and a pair of black spectacles. 2 seconds later, the woman looked at Feng Bujue, or rather, she looked at the screen on her side and said, "Hello, Mr. Feng Bujue." Even though Professor Cox looked young, her tone and the presence that flowed out from between her brows gave off the feeling of a mature woman. And Feng Bujue could naturally sense that the actual age of the person before him was probably much older than her appearance suggested. "Hello, unknown lady." When Brother Ju replied, he already recognized the owner of this voice was the person who had tried to stop him from killing Igor earlier. "You can call me Professor Cox, Mr. Feng Bujue," Cox replied. "You can call me whatever you want, Professor Cox." Feng Bujue mimicked the way the woman spoke and replied mockingly. "Humph." Facing Brother Ju's reaction, Professor Cox scoffed and then continued, "First, I would like to represent the Foundation to welcome your arrival." "Thank you." Feng Bujue's sarcasm was on full display. "The way you treat your guests has left a deep impression on me." As he said that, he turned around and showed his handcuffed hands to the woman with malice. "Ha!" Professor Cox scoffed disapprovingly. "Mr. Feng Bujue, considering your previous behavior, I think the way you treat your guests is still quite reasonable and appropriate." "Is that so?" Feng Bujue said. "Then, if I may ask, what is your next step?" he asked with a relaxed expression. "Are you going to house me just like that?" "If possible, that is indeed my intention," Cox said bluntly. "But, judging from your attitude, you should be able to use some method to return to your dimension at any time. Since you know that, why would you go to the trouble of handcuffing me?" Feng Bujue asked. "Of course, it is because I, as well as all the project managers, believe that you are very dangerous." When Cox answered, there was a serious expression on her face. "Haha. Then I am truly flattered," Feng Bujue replied with a smile. He wanted to test the man's reaction one step further. "You are a sociopath, Feng Bujue," Cox replied instantly. "I do not think you will feel flattered." She paused for half a second before continuing. "Your goal has always been clear, and that is to break through the mirror universe that we have created and come here to complete some kind of mission that SCP-3232 has requested of you. Oh, speaking of that." At this point, Feng Bujue followed the man's lead. "I do wish to ask you." His expression shifted slightly, and he said, "This SCP-3232 that you mentioned, what exactly is it?" For Feng Bujue, this was indeed a question because he had heard of this term for the first time when the system was updating the main quest. As an experienced SCP enthusiast who was familiar with various SCP projects, Brother Bujue naturally knew that in the current SCP project, there was no such number as 3232. Other than that, he had come to the conclusion that the real identity of this 3232 was most likely Thriller Paradise itself. But ultimately, he had not gone through the Golden Foundation's document on this project. He had to go through the document to know how well the Golden Foundation had grasped the nature of this project. "I am not obligated to answer that question," Cox replied. "Also, I think you actually know what the project number refers to. You're just trying to test how much we know." Obviously, not only was Feng Bujue testing the woman was also testing Feng Bujue. Even though they had only exchanged a few words, it was clear that the two were engaged in a heated exchange of words. Both of them had only said 30% of what they wanted to say, but they were trying to get the full story out of the other. "Ha!" Feng Bujue shrugged and sighed. "Looks like we have reached a stalemate. Perhaps..." Dr. Cox started to pace to the side. "Perhaps we can talk about something else." As she spoke, she had already walked to her desk, and the camera moved with her. When Dr. Cox bent down to sit down, she seemed to subconsciously show off her cleavage. "I notice that you seem to be a writer," Cox continued. Cox was still talking. When talking about these unimportant topics, her expression became much more relaxed, and there was even a hint of gentleness between her eyebrows. "I'm very interested to hear about the stories you've written." "Is that so? Who was Fong Bujue?" He saw through the man's thought almost instantly, and he replied with a smile, "Recently, I did come up with a very interesting plot. Do you want to hear it?" Dr. Cox held her chin with one hand and revealed a charming smile. "I would love to hear it. Actually, the plot is not that complicated. It is mainly about a woman and a man who have a video call," Fong Bujue said. "It sounds a bit like our current situation." Dr. Cox's expression suddenly became a bit stiff. Fong Bujue ignored her and continued, "To be precise, the two protagonists of this story are a menopausal woman who looks much younger than her actual age and a handsome, smart, and mysterious man who no one knows about." This time, Dr. Cox did not respond. She must have been shocked by Brother Ju's shamelessness. In the beginning, the conversation between the two of them was quite interesting. Although they didn't make much progress on the answers they were seeking, their psychological game was remarkable. Fong Bujue began to pace slowly as he spoke, until the woman received some information through the communication device hidden in her ear, or rather, an order. From that moment on, she changed her conversation strategy. Brother Ju put on a helpless expression. She began to seduce and flirt, trying to distract the man and delay the time. At this point, Cox's face darkened at once. She angrily raised her hand, took out a hidden communication device from her left ear, and slammed it on the table. She put on an angry expression and stared at Fong Bujue. "Haha. Sorry, your change is too sudden. Your acting is not natural enough," Fong Bujue said. "Also, I think it is better to expose you quickly. Although it is not impossible to flirt with you for a while, when I reveal the truth, you will be even more embarrassed than now." "Then I have to thank you?" Cox said coldly. Her eyes looked like she wanted to eat someone. "Ah, no need to thank me." Fong Bujue's extremely sarcastic response added fuel to the fire. "I sincerely hope that you can still laugh later." Cox's patience had reached its limit. She could no longer hold back her anger and said something that sounded like a threat. "Don't worry, I will always be able to laugh." Brother Ju continued, "If one day I can't laugh anymore, I will just cut my own cheeks with a knife." "Of course, I understand what you're trying to say. I think, from the moment you started winking at me, there's already a team of people who specialize in dealing with people like me. I can foresee that their interrogation style will be very tough, and they will have a way to stop me from leaving this realm of yours." Lucien paused for a moment before he continued, "Of course, I understand what you're trying to say. I think, from the moment you started winking at me, there's already a team of people who specialize in dealing with people like me. I can foresee that their interrogation style will be very tough." His deduction was basically spot on. This made Cox's face turn even uglier. "Don't worry, Professor Cox." After a few seconds, Fong Bujue stopped pacing. With a fearless and even expectant look, he said, "I will not run away. Today I have no reason to run away." Clang, clang. Just as Brother Ju said this, the electronic door behind him opened. Chapter 1148. When Fong Bujue turned around, a man in a black suit had already walked into the room. The man looked to be in his 40s. He had short hair and the hair at his temples was already graying. However, there were no signs of baldness on his forehead. The suit he was wearing looked very neat, as if it had just been taken off the ironing board. It complemented his tall and muscular figure very well. Clang. 2 seconds later, the electronic door automatically closed again. The man in the suit's footsteps and gaze all stopped at this moment. Then, Dr. Cox saw this and immediately looked at the man in the suit. I'll leave the rest to you. She hurriedly said this and glanced at Brother Jew. Then, she ended the call. As the video wall turned back into a colorless metal wall, the room was shrouded in silence. In the room, two men stood facing each other. They were about 3 meters apart and silently looked at each other. Feng Bujue's expression looked very relaxed. There was a faint smile on his lips, but there was always a hint of sharpness in his eyes. The man in the suit had a steely expression on his face. There was no change in his expression. Even Brother Jew could not tell what was going on from his expression. What did you see? In the end, the man in the suit broke the silence and asked first. His voice was slightly hoarse, but it gave people a sense of stability and reliability. Regarding the question that he asked, other people might think that it was a random question, but Brother Jew understood what the man was referring to. I didn't see anything. Feng Bujue replied without hesitation. Is that so? The man in the suit said. Yes. Feng Bujue said. Even if I speak to you now, is it the same? The man in the suit asked. It's the same. Brother Jew replied. Rather than observing you, it's better to observe a statue. At least the statue contains a lot of the Creator's thoughts and feelings. After receiving this answer, the man in the suit was silent for a moment. Then, he said, Do you know what I saw? Heh. Feng Bujue chuckled. Tell me about it. What I see is a cloud of fog. The man in the suit continued, In the center of the fog there's a person I don't know. Since this person has been dealing with the fog for a long time, he has adapted to moving in the fog. Because of this, he can make everyone who wants to spy on him return empty-handed. At this point, I'm sure everyone could tell that what they were asking and talking about was the first impression they had of each other. Hearing that, Feng Bujue tilted his head and scoffed coldly. I still haven't asked for your name. He purposely spoke in a genteel manner to see if the other party could understand him. You can call me Agent D19 or... Not only did the man in the suit understand Brother Jew's words, but he also didn't find it strange at all. Sir. Okay, D19. Feng Bujue continued. You can call me Feng Bujue, or anything will do. When he said that, Brother Jew was calculating something else in his mind. This man didn't show any suspicion toward the way I spoke or the content of my words, and the speed of his reply was quite fast. From this, I can come up with 2 hypotheses. 1, he is already proficient in Chinese. 2, at this moment, he is being interfered with by the system, and he is completely unaware of it. On the other hand, D19's face was still drawn, and he used the same tone to say, Feng Bujue, next, I will start the interrogation. He did not probe further into Brother Jew, but directly stated what he was going to do next. Feng Bujue understood this situation. He knew that people who would do something like this often believed that they would be able to take the leading role in the interrogation. Therefore, Brother Jew instantly asked, I guess your interrogation will be accompanied by violence, right? Of course, D19 said as he raised his fist and aimed it at Feng Bujue's face. But at that moment, Brother Jew suddenly lowered his head and rushed forward, using his head to meet the man's fist. Crack, 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 crack. Immediately after, there was a series of very obvious sounds of human bones shattering. So, that's how it is. When D19 pulled his hand back, his expression finally changed. You are indeed not a normal character. He was not wrong. A normal person would not use their head to meet a fist. You flatter me. Feng Bujue resisted the pain that came from his forehead and forced a smile. He turned to D19 and said, I think you are more impressive. You have broken several of your fingers, but you did not even make a sound. His eyes shifted slightly and his tone sharpened. Come to think of it, you are not a normal person, are you? I have indeed survived accidents caused by a few projects, D19 said bluntly. D19 did not mince his words. And after being exposed to multiple projects, he obtained some special abilities. Oh? Multiple projects? Brother Jew raised his eyebrows. For example? No comment, D19 replied. TSK. I knew it would be this kind of answer. Fong Bujua spat and said with disdain. Bang. Before he could finish his sentence, D19 actually swung his injured hand again and threw a punch at him. At this distance, even with the help of the zero-time simulation, Brother Jew did not have time to use the same strategy as before. Therefore, with his hands cuffed, he could only use his torso to take the blow. What the F***CK? What is going on with this guy? After taking the punch, Fong Bujue could not help but curse internally. Even with broken bones, he is still able to exert so much power. Even my chest is damaged from the punch. The power that came from the punch was indeed shocking. If you want to do that kind of thing, you can just use a D-grade personnel or use a device. Why do you need to use? Who told you? At this moment, Professor Cox interrupted Brother Jew. That's D19? Hearing that, Fong Bujue's expression shifted slightly. Are you trying to tell me this so-called agent is actually a D-level personnel in disguise? Regarding this speculation, even Brother Jew himself did not think it was possible. This was because D19's presence, manner of speech, and the power that he unleashed when he attacked Fong Bujue all showed that he was not a normal person. No, he is not a D-level personnel, Cox quickly added, but Kwong. Bang. Before she could finish her explanation, the door opened again. This time, the person who walked in was actually a man who looked exactly like D19. You sure are heavy-handed, Fong Bujue. The D19 that walked in looked exactly like the one that Brother Jew had beaten to the ground, and they were wearing the same outfit. Ho! When Brother Jew saw the second D19 and heard what he said, he instantly understood many things. Could it be you have the power to replicate yourself? I'm sorry, D19 replied. I still have no comment. Even though he did not say anything, when Brother Jew said the word replicate, he used a feigned nonchalant glance to glance at the other D19 on the ground. And this fleeting movement was captured by Brother Jew. So, you're going to continue the interrogation? Fong Bujue did not expose what he had seen and thought. He continued to use the attitude of a dead pig that was not afraid of boiling water to ask D19. No, there has never been an interrogation, D19 replied. We're just acting for you, Cox added. Oh. Fong Bujue was confused. When did this start? Don't tell me your flirtatious gestures before, and your subsequent anger from embarrassment. Yes, that was an important part of the test. Cox once again interrupted Brother Jew. We have to make you feel like you've seen through everything and have control over the situation. She paused. And what you're going to do next, be it the intelligence that you showed when you faced me or the power that you showed when you were attacked by the agents, that is what we're going to see. She was not just saying that in hindsight. Just from her tone, it was clear that everything was part of her plan. Therefore, when he heard that, a fire rose in Fong Bujue's heart. All right, your performance has left a deep impression on us. On the other side, D19 took another step forward and made a please gesture at Brother Jew. Please. Fong Bujue. His hand was pointing at the door of this room. What's wrong? You've suddenly decided to bring me to another place? Fong Bujue asked. D19's attitude was as cold as ever. It was not a sudden decision. Long before I arrived at this room, your next stop had already been decided. Ha! Fong Bujue chuckled nonchalantly as he turned his gaze back to the D19 that had been beaten into a pulp. Looks like I can't say no to that. He suppressed the anger in his heart and decided to cooperate with the man. Soon, Fong Bujue obediently put on the handcuffs and was escorted out of the room by D19. D19, who had been knocked to the ground, was tossed into the room just like that. Based on Brother Jew's prediction, The real D-19 had an easier time creating this kind of clone, or else he would not have acted so nonchalantly. Of course, there was another possibility, that this D-19 who was chatting with Brother Jew was also a clone. 5 minutes later, inside Dr. Cox's office. D-Do. D-Do, the electronic doorbell at the door beeped twice, announcing that someone had come to visit. Please come in. Dr. Cox didn't even check who it was outside the door and responded. Then, the door opened with D-19 leading the way. Fong Bujue arrived at Cox's office. Once the two met, their eyes met in midair. They were like two cunning hunters who wanted to turn the other into their prey. Chapter 1149. There is something that I have to be honest with you. After Fong Bujue stood still, he was the first to speak to Professor Cox. What is it? Cox thought the man was going to say something important, so she answered seriously. To her surprise, Fong Bujue stared at the coffee cup on her table and said, I quite like coffee as well. When he finished, Cox's face twitched. Then she gave a long sigh and raised her head to say to D-19, Agent, please remove the handcuffs for him. It looked like Cox understood the meaning behind Brother Jew's words perfectly. Are you sure, Doctor? But D-19 did not do so immediately because he deeply felt that this action came with great risk. Yes, I am sure. Cox gave an affirmative answer. In that case, D-19 did not say anything else. He took 2 steps forward and lifted Brother Jew's wrist slightly. Then, D-19 used his right thumb to press on a notch on the handcuff. In that moment, there was the sound of electricity. Then, Fong Bujue felt the pressure on his wrists lessen. The handcuffs deflated like a life buoy that had its air deflated, and very naturally, they fell from his hands, unlocking by scanning a specific person's fingerprint. At that moment, Brother Jew thought to himself, the technology in this world sure is reasonable. Mr. Fong Bujue. After D-19 removed the handcuffs, Professor Cox immediately said, I hope you will not betray my trust in you and do something that will bring trouble to both of us. Save that kind of nonsense for other people, Doctor. Brother Jew rubbed his wrist and replied calmly, You and I both know that if I intend to use violence, this pair of handcuffs will not be able to stop me. He paused and added, Actually, if I had that intention, from the beginning, I would not have let you put this thing on me. Hearing that, Cox looked at Fong Bujue quietly for a few seconds. Then, she snorted and glanced at the side of the room. The coffee machine is over there. Please help yourself. Fong Bujue understood that the other party was taking advantage of this opportunity to change the topic and start a new round of probing. You don't have to test me like that. Fong Bujue did not walk in the direction the man indicated because he knew it would be a waste of time. I can tell you frankly that the technological system here is very different from the one in my world. That's what he meant. I don't know how to use that chandelier-like coffee maker. In addition, Brother Jew was careful. He didn't say, your technology is more advanced than my world's. Instead, he said, the technology system is different. This way, the other party wouldn't be able to judge the technology level of Brother Jew based on the age. Really? When Cox heard this, he leaned back in his chair and said in a noncommittal tone, I'd like to hear in detail. What is the technology system on your side? Ha. Fong Bujue laughed. Sure. He paused for half a second before changing the topic. If you have anything to say, wait until I've seen the information on SCP-3232. Humph. Cox scoffed and replied, I'm afraid I don't have the permission to show you the information on any project. Go ahead and apply. Fong Bujue replied without hesitation. He walked to the chair in front of the man's desk and sat down, crossing his legs. Mr. Fong Bujue, do you think this request of yours is reasonable? Cox asked in a tone that was close to a question. Of course, it is reasonable. And Fong Bujue once again used a very fast speed to reply. I am something that you cannot contain and cannot fully understand. You know that better than anyone else. You know that if I want to, I can disappear from your sight at any time and never return. You also know that I can use violence to communicate with you, and I don't care about the risk that comes with that." He spread out his hands and put on a very arrogant look. "To put it more clearly, if I want to leave, I can leave. Before I leave, I can kill you, or do something else, such as releasing some of the projects in your facility. No matter whether my operation will be stopped or not, for me, there is no harm in trying." At this point, Fong Bujua turned around and snapped his fingers at D19. "Excuse me, can you get me a cup of coffee without sugar?" Then, he turned to Professor Cox and said, "Professor, I believe you know very well what I'm talking about, or else at this moment, we wouldn't be sitting here talking to each other." A smile appeared on his lips. "You are a clever person. When I kicked away Mr. D19's duplicate, you knew that I wanted to negotiate with you. If not, I would have kicked more than 100 people to death before I put on the handcuffs. But negotiation is not an interrogation. Both parties have a certain amount of bargaining chip. Now, my bargaining chip, or rather, my choice, obviously has the upper hand, so I have more than enough reasons and conditions to make you compromise first." Brother Ju said all that in one breath. During the process, Professor Cox's expression changed multiple times before he entered a state of speechlessness. Agent D19, on the other hand, maintained his expressionless face as he stood at the back, hesitating in his heart. Should I go get him his coffee or not? Please wait for a moment. After a while, Professor Cox stood up. I need to leave for a few minutes. Go ahead, I'm not going anywhere. Fong Bujua slumped into the chair and raised his hands as a pillow. Agent, give him the coffee. Before Cox walked out of the office, he said to D19. D19 helplessly walked to the wall and started to operate the coffee machine. Fong Bujua sat there and said without turning his head, Mr. D19, I'm very curious. If I go over the desk now and touch Professor Cox's computer, what will you do? When Brother Ju said that, D19's action of getting the coffee froze. However, he quickly regained his composure and said coldly, all the programs are encrypted. If you are not doing it yourself, you can only activate some of the system's basic programs. I knew it. Regarding this point, Fong Bujua had already guessed a thing or two. At the moment, he merely wanted to confirm his hypothesis through D19. In an era where even handcuffs can be unlocked by scanning fingerprints, it must be very difficult to steal, right? Even though you've led the conversation smoothly and used this conversational tone, D19 said as he returned with a cup of coffee. But your intention to get information about our world's technology is quite obvious. He placed the coffee before Brother Ju. Therefore, I refuse to answer this question of yours. Fine, then let's talk about something else. Fong Bujua shrugged. How old are you this year? Are you married? Do you have children? Have you ever played a group, beep, with your clones? After being bombarded by Brother Ju's trash talk for 10 minutes, D19 was at the edge of collapse. Thankfully, at that moment, Professor Cox returned. Mr. Fong Bujua. The professor walked through the door and said, I've already reported your request to the higher-ups. We will need to wait for a while before we can get a clear response. Oh. Brother Ju answered casually. The next second, he used a casual tone to say something that caused Professor Cox's expression to shift. In other words, it will take some time to forge a file on SCP-3232, right? As soon as she finished speaking, Dr. Cox froze on the spot. She looked like a second-rate actress who had suddenly forgotten her lines on stage. Don't be so surprised, Fong Bujua said. Before you left, I already knew what you were going to do. He sipped his coffee and said calmly, in those 10 minutes just now, you just ran to another room to observe my interaction with D19 and arranged for the document to be forged. As he spoke, he turned around to smile at the professor. Now are you thinking, could it be that he has secretly planted a listening device on me? And when I asked that question, you immediately thought, could it be that he can read people's minds? Can you do it? Cox asked directly. No, Feng Bujua replied. You're a very annoying fellow. You know that yourself, don't you? Cox's expression had become rather ugly when he answered this sentence. Yes, I am that charming, Feng Bujua replied with a cheeky grin. But that is not the point. He took another sip of coffee. Professor, for a game like this, even if you find 10 people of the same level as you, I can play with you for the whole day. However, even if I have the patience, I don't have the time. So, let me give you a piece of advice. Put away your tricks and save your colleagues some work. Hurry up and hand over the real information on SCP-3232. I know you have the authority to do that. If we continue this conversation, we'll be talking about the difference in talent. A normal person would stop there, but Brother Ju still wanted to add, your tears. 1 minute later, Feng Bujua finished reading all the information on SCP-3232. In the process, he naturally realized that this world was the same one that he had experienced as Rudy Austin last time. However, the era had been changed to the distant future. Therefore, he immediately thought of 2 things that he needed to pay attention to. First, the SCP-079 in this universe was no longer in existence. Second, even though he had information on more than 2,000 SCP projects in his mind, he had to consider the influence of time on these projects. For example, some biological projects might age or even die. Some projects with limited resources might have been exhausted. Some projects might be damaged, become obsolete, or lose their unique properties due to repeated use. Considering the number, complexity, and unpredictability of SCP projects, then there were the various hypotheses of the Foundation's discovery, destruction, and replacement projects over the years. Even for Feng Bujua, it would take a long time to sort through all this information. Chapter 1150. So, that's how it is. After reading the whole file, Feng Bujua thought to himself, no wonder they are the foundation of the future. Even though under the influence of the system, they are unable to find out the definition of thriller paradise, mission, and player, under the limited conditions, they have basically grasped the concept of these things. Now that they have reached this stage, the system has to come up with a countermeasure. But, to completely wipe away their knowledge of SCP-3232, that does not appear to be possible. After giving it some thought, Brother Ju changed the topic. Even if I destroy this facility that I am currently in and kill everyone here, the project file cannot be destroyed. To completely wipe away all traces of SCP-3232 in this world, the only way is to kill everyone in this world who has read this file and destroy all the information related to this project in the Foundation's electronic and paper database. Considering the fact that this future world might have other forms of data storage that I do not know about, even if I do the above 2 things, I might not succeed. Brother Ju thought to himself. At this point, a solution that might seem insane to normal people was born in Brother Ju's mind. How about, I try to destroy this entire world? Brother Ju thought to himself. Thankfully, this thought only lasted for less than 2 seconds before it was tossed out of his mind. No, that's not right. That's the wrong idea. Feng Bujua then realized, the content of the mission is not for me to completely wipe out this world's knowledge of thriller paradise, but for me to destroy all observation records related to SCP-3232 in the Foundation. In other words, soon, a logical conclusion that matched the wishes of the system appeared clearly in Feng Bujua's mind. I get it now. After giving it some thought, Brother Ju's train of thought suddenly cleared up. The system wants to cut off its connection with this world, right? Now that he had figured this out, many other details also became clear to him. SCP-3232 is a project that cannot be contained, and its existence is debatable. As long as the system no longer generates scenarios in this world, then the file on SCP-3232 will soon become a piece of paper. The only evidence that supported this was the observation record. Once I destroy those records as well, then, without anyone needing to do anything, the Foundation itself will categorize SCP-3232 as something that never existed several years later, and its documents will be classified as neutralized. Any project that has been destroyed or has lost its special properties, extra dimensions, or negative effects. The projects below this level should have a memo to record the previous information of the project. The levels were all debatable. As for the possibility of destroying the observation record, it was obviously very high. First of all, the observation record was not a conceptual thing like the project file, but a narrative text. It was a series of detailed lists of times, places, and events. If the project file was destroyed, it could still be rewritten according to people's memories. However, if the observation record was destroyed, it was impossible to rewrite it according to people's memories. This was because the basic requirements for such records were to be detailed and accurate, not just correct. Under such requirements, people's memories were undoubtedly unreliable. Secondly, unless there was some kind of substantial breakthrough in the research, otherwise long files like the observation record that were constantly being added would not be sent out of this experimental facility. For example, in the project file that I was browsing, there was not a single observation record of Thriller Paradise's scenario. It only mentioned the existence of the observation plan. Obviously, those detailed observation records were kept inside the facility that carried out the observation plan. In other words, this base that I was currently in. That was why the system tried so hard to guide me to break out of the sandbox and come here. To put it bluntly, the mission this time was very clear. I just needed to follow the instructions on the surface. The difficult part was, the player had to figure out the system's intention and the above information before they could take action. Only by knowing how and why could the player complete the mission that the system wanted the player to complete without exposing its intention. If the player did not see through this step and acted recklessly, then there was an 80 to 90% chance that the player would expose the target of the mission. The result of that was, the NPCs would try their best to transfer the observation record out, causing the mission to fail. Taking a step back, even if they failed to transfer the record, as long as the player's intention was conveyed to the outside world, then the mission would be a complete failure. Because then, the entire Golden Foundation would know that SCP-3232 existed. Not only that, they were trying to make SCP-3232-1 destroy the evidence of its existence. Even though personally speaking, I have cleared the scenario, but the system will be completely exposed because of that. SCP-3232 will definitely be upgraded to a Keter-level project by the Foundation, and they will have to conduct more research on it. That is something that will bring endless trouble. Fong Bujue used 2 minutes to go through all that in his mind and used it to clear his mind. Now, his goal was clear. No matter what, he had to find out how the observation record was stored, like where the electronic file of the observation record was stored, and whether there were any paper copies or other media. She would definitely not overturn all of her previous research results just because of a few words from an unknown and untrustworthy cross-dimensional creature. Okay. After the sneer, Dr. Cox continued, then I'd like to ask you, what is the true nature of this project? I'm afraid it will be difficult for me to tell you everything without any basis. Fong Bujua said and shrugged. Besides, I can see that you don't believe me. He laughed and did not hide his mockery. Whether it's because of a woman's stubbornness or because of the work you've done, at least at this moment, compared to someone like me who knows the truth, you're more willing to believe in the research results you've obtained. In this short speech, He had already used provocation, retreating in order to advance, loosening the reins in order to grasp them better, and other tricks. He had even purposely carried a hint of sexism. It could be said that every word and sentence was stuck on the reverse scale of Cox, this strong woman. When Cox heard this, she was naturally angry, but she could not do anything. Otherwise, it would only confirm what the other party said. Then what do you want? The doctor tried to control her expression and tone as she spoke to Brother Ju in a deep voice. Fong Bujua was waiting for the other party to ask this question, but when Dr. Cox said it, he still maintained a neutral attitude and said, "Doctor, the observation project mentioned in the file, you're responsible for it, right?" "What?" Cox immediately understood the meaning behind Brother Ju's words. "Do you want to see the observation records?" "Yes." Fong Bujua nodded and replied, "I don't need a lot, just 3 to 5 copies will do. Combined with a few different records, I can explain the theory of SCP-3232 in detail." "Ridiculous!" The next second, Cox shouted without hesitation. She questioned, "So far, you haven't said a single word about SCP-3232. But you've tried again and again to get information about this project. I seriously suspect that you don't want to tell us anything or you don't know anything about SCP-3232, so you want to use us to get information about it." Her words were loud and clear, and her reasoning was logical. But when Fong Bujua heard this, he was as calm as ever. His expression did not change. "Doctor, you're too agitated. Don't change the topic." Cox glared at Brother Ju and said coldly. "Ha ha!" Fong Bujua laughed. "Whether you believe it or not, my understanding of you people is far more than you can imagine." Cox raised her eyebrows. "For example? When I said the term, O5 personnel, didn't you think it was strange?" Fong Bujua hinted. When this was said, Cox's expression changed. She thought to herself, "That's true. How did he know this term? I've been monitoring the conversation between him and D19. He didn't mention this at all, and it was only after that he read the document about SCP-3232. If you need it, I can tell you the serial numbers and general characteristics of the 10 SCP projects right now." Fong Bujua did not give Cox much time to think. He quickly continued, "Of course, that has nothing to do with the observation records that I asked you to show me." He paused. "I just want to tell you that I don't care about getting information from you because I already know enough. The reason why I told you about SCP-3232 based on the observation records is because it is indeed necessary." Brother Ju spoke quickly, leaving no room for Cox to interrupt. "For example, if I asked you to teach a class on discrete mathematics or solid-state physics without the aid of any teaching materials, would you be able to do it?" Cox did not answer this question because the answer was obvious. She hesitated for a few seconds before saying, "So, you mean you have to use an example to explain the characteristics of SCP-3232? "That's right," Fong Bujua replied. "Then can't you use your own example?" Cox asked again. "Isn't your experience in the Psychotronics Underground experimental base a ready-made record of SCP-3232's activities?" "Sorry, I can't do that," Fong Bujua replied. "Why not?" Cox asked. "I don't know the true face of Mount Lushan, but I'm fated to be in this mountain." Brother Ju answered her with these words. He did not know how the system translated it, but Dr. Cox seemed to have understood it. She thought about it for about 10 seconds before replying somewhat impulsively, "How about this? Tell me the information of the 10 projects first, and I'll see if you really know or just pretend to know." Chapter 1151. For Fong Bujua, it was not difficult for him to report the complete information of 10 SCP projects, even if he took the future factor into account. After all, he had more than 2,000 SCP projects in his head, so he had a lot of options. He only needed to pick out some SCP projects that are almost impossible to change with the passage of time, and then summarize them. Of course, when Brother Jew was narrating the file, he was careful. Even though he could have recited the file word for word, he did not do so. He deliberately used a very simple and highly summarized way to describe the project information he knew. For example, SCP-173, Brother Jew described it as a concrete creation that will teleport over to snap your neck the moment it leaves your sight. While SCP-222, Brother Jew described it as a sarcophagus that is located inside a tunnel on Mount Dolomites, located in Aviano, Italy, that can replicate a living person. For examples like that, he only gave the serial number and characteristic. He did not even mention the level of the project. This was undoubtedly a reflection of Feng Bujue's meticulous way of doing things. Although the things he picked out were projects that were unlikely to be affected by time, after so many years, the files on these projects would more or less have been revised several times. Perhaps some of the wording of the document would be changed, or perhaps a few experimental records would be added to the document, or perhaps, after enough research, the level of the project would be upgraded or downgraded. Feng Bujue also took these into consideration. Therefore, when he reported the information to Dr. Cox, he always used a more general way of describing the project. Originally, this kind of file was not known to even the people inside the Foundation. Many project files were restricted by the level of access. Even if they knew, no one would recite the entire document in detail. Basically, everyone would just memorize the concept after reading it. Therefore, as long as Brother Jew said the project number and the basic characteristics of the project, the other party would not be able to detect any flaws. Okay. I've already said more than 10. Do you want to continue? 2 minutes later, Feng Bujue used the speed of a crosstalk to describe the characteristics of more than 10 events. Throughout the whole process, he kept an eye on Dr. Cox's expression. When he finished the 12th project, he felt that the other party must have believed him, so he stopped and asked this question. This information. Dr. Cox's expression was very serious. It was the kind of seriousness that could not be concealed. Where did you get it? Since the Golden Foundation can conduct research on the hyperdimension, then naturally individuals or organizations from other dimensions can come and study the Golden Foundation as well. Feng Bujue gave another plausible answer. Looks like, Cox asked tentatively, you've done quite a lot of research on us. I can't tell you that. Feng Bujue mimicked the tone that D19 had used earlier and gave this answer without hesitation. He quickly changed the topic. In any case, I have already proven that there is no need for me to pry into your intelligence. With regards to whether you will show me the observation record of SCP-3232 or not, honestly, I don't really care. He paused for a moment. You were the one who asked me to explain the theory behind SCP-3232. Now, because you didn't provide me with the necessary conditions to explain it, I can't do it. So, that's your problem. Even though Feng Bujue said, to be honest, what he said was basically not the truth. He was indeed adept at deceiving others and bluffing his way out of the situation. And the expression and actions he put on were indeed indifferent. It was very convincing. Phew. Cox heard this and let out a long sigh. She leaned back in her chair. At this moment, she raised her hand and pushed the black-rimmed glasses on the bridge of her nose. She looked at Brother Jew's face with a burning gaze. She did not say a word. It was obvious that she was thinking and hesitating. Feng Bujue, on the other hand, continued to use an enigmatic and cunning smile to respond to the man's every stare. Answer me one more question. After a moment, Cox spoke again. If your answer is reasonable, I'll show you the observation records. Ask away. Feng Bujue answered. When he said this word, Brother Jew was already prepared to deal with all kinds of questions. Why do you want to cooperate with me? A second later, Cox asked. Since you can leave our dimension at any time, what reason do you have to stay here and negotiate with me? What do you gain from this? Ha! Feng Bujua laughed. I thought you were going to ask me something. He picked up the coffee on the table and finished the last sip. It's very simple. Because SCP-3232 suggested that I do it. His answer this time was solid, and he did not need to explain further because he had already said before that if he wanted to explain the theory behind SCP-3232, he would have to show him the data first. Therefore, this answer, once again, was a checkmate for Dr. Cox. In this round of communication, Feng Bujue only gave a dozen or so pieces of known information that were meaningless to both sides. He also used a series of logically sound lies that could not be verified and debunked, and successfully forced Dr. Cox to comply. Okay. I can show you the observation records. Dr. Cox stood up and said, but we have to change locations. Okay. Feng Bujue also stood up. Anywhere is fine. Dr. Cox did not directly take Brother Jew out of the office. Even if she wanted to, it was against the rules. After all, in the eyes of the doctor, Feng Bujue was still SCP-3232-1. No matter how good he was at talking, he was still a project, or rather, a derivative of a project. Therefore, the doctor still had to follow the procedure. First, she gave an order to the outside world through the communicator and summoned a few guards who were responsible for escorting the target. Then, she said goodbye to Brother Jew and quickly left the room. For the next few minutes, Feng Bujue and the few guards in the office looked at each other, waiting for the doctor to arrange the next step. After a few minutes, Dr. Cox returned to the office and called Feng Bujue. Then, the two of them, accompanied by the guards, set off to their destination. This time, under the doctor's request, the guards did not handcuff Brother Jew. Just like that, they left the office and walked for a while before entering an elevator. The elevator finally stopped on the second floor. They were on the fourth floor just now. Then, under the guidance of the doctor, they walked into a cylindrical corridor that was transparent on three sides, except for the bottom. As they walked through the corridor, Feng Bujue looked through the glass surrounding the corridor, or maybe it wasn't glass, but some other transparent building material, and saw the scenery outside the building. As far as his eyes could see, he saw a forest. Although the forest was not dense, he could tell that this was the kind of wilderness that was far away from the city. It was a place that normal people would never set foot in their entire lives. Also, he could see that the corridor was completely exposed to the outside world. At both ends of the corridor, there were two large buildings that were hidden under optical camouflage. So, that's how it is. Using this corridor to divide the base into two parts, this way, when some projects fail, it can minimize the loss and death of the facilities. Before they finished the corridor, Brother Jew opened his lips to give his opinion. To put it bluntly, in the event of an emergency, we can immediately abandon half of the people and equipment in the base, right? Professor Cox continued, personally, I am very opposed to this method. Unfortunately, most of the people in the upper management, or should I say, most of the men. She paused and made a quotation mark with her hand. Then, she turned to look at Brother Jew. All of them think that this is the most reasonable and rational plan. The doctor's tone of voice clearly showed her dissatisfaction. Even the guards could tell that she had a disagreement with the higher management. She also had a certain degree of discrimination against women. Ha! The next second, Feng Bujue chuckled coldly and continued, Professor, do you think this method is a bit lacking in humanity? Isn't it? Cox asked. Feng Bujue did not answer her question. Instead, he said, so, when an emergency happens, the decision to blow up half of the base is not made by people. When When Professor Cox heard this, she seemed to have realized something. Although she had already realized that Brother Jew was testing her, she adjusted her expression before she turned around. Unfortunately, the 3 guards on the left, right, and back of Brother Jew had already used their facial expressions to answer Brother Jew's question. The guards were not commandos, so they did not wear helmets. How do I know? After Feng Bujue finished his test, he wanted to take the opportunity to show off. He quickly took over the doctor's words and laughed. Haha, isn't it obvious? He paused for half a second before he continued. When an emergency happens, it is undoubtedly unreasonable to let someone or a group of people outside the base decide whether to blow up half of the base. When the time comes, it will be difficult to report the situation here to the outside world in a timely manner. Not to mention, even if the report is reported in a timely manner, the people outside the base will not know the specific situation here. Their decision could very well be wrong. As Feng Bujue spoke, he gestured with his hands. His action made the 3 guards nervous. They almost grabbed their stun batons and stabbed him. Fortunately, they soon realized that Brother Jew was only using his body language to accompany his narration. Then, is it okay to give the decision to blow up half of the base to someone in the base? Feng Bujue continued. Without a doubt, that is even more impossible. He turned his head sideways and looked at the guard on his left. For example, brother, if I give you this right during an emergency, if you are in the facility where the accident happened, what will you do? The guard naturally heard Brother Jew's question, but he did not answer. According to the rules, unless it was absolutely necessary, he had to avoid interacting with people or things that were being escorted. Another example is, if you are not in the facility where the accident happened, but 90% of the people in the facility are on the opposite side. There are your colleagues, friends, or other people who care about you. What will you do? Feng Bujue continued, but he did not intend to listen to the guard's answer. This question was the same whether he answered or not. As long as his point of view was clear, it was fine. So, it is not okay to let the people in the base make the decision. A few seconds later, Feng Bujue said with certainty. Okay, you guessed it right. Since Brother Jew already knew, Professor Cox had nothing to hide. The self-destruction program of the base is completely controlled by the computer. The computer will not hesitate. As long as the trigger condition is met, it will immediately start the corresponding process. This was a very important piece of information. It was also the biggest breakthrough Feng Bujue had made so far in his probing and intelligence gathering. Chapter 1152. In the scenario, Feng Bujue did not need to go to the toilet. The system would not create a corresponding physiological need for him, and it would not allow him to take off his pants. However, the people from the Golden Foundation did not know that. From their perspective, Brother Jew's request was quite reasonable. First, he stayed in the parallel universe mirror image generator for 4 to 5 hours. In fact, more than half of the time was spent writing novels. Then, he came to this space, stayed for another 10 minutes, and drank a cup of coffee. Under these conditions, his request to go to the toilet did not seem suspicious. Sigh. Professor Cox sighed and showed a helpless expression. Fine, follow me. After all, she had to wait for Feng Bujue, so she led Brother Jew to the toilet. When they reached the door of the male toilet, the professor signaled for the guards to follow Brother Jew into the toilet. Regarding this, Feng Bujue did not say anything. This was within his expectations. After entering the male toilet, Brother Jew scanned his surroundings and then walked toward one of the cubicles. What are you doing? Feng Bujue saw the 3 guards following him closely. Do you want to come in and help me clean up? Hearing that, the 3 guards looked at each other and hesitated. In the end, they stopped at the cubicle door. This was something that couldn't be helped. The space in the cubicle was limited. An adult sitting on the toilet would occupy 80% of the space. If there were people standing around him, there would definitely be physical contact between them, and it would be very close physical contact. Wait. 2 seconds later, just as Brother Jew entered the cubicle and was about to close the door, one of the guards suddenly said, "Please leave the cubicle door open." "Why should I leave it open?" Feng Bujue asked. "So that I can throw feces at you? Even if you don't think it stinks, I think it's dirty." The guard ignored his trash talk and replied coldly, "We cannot allow you to leave our sight." "Whoa, you pervert." Feng Bujue gave him a sidelong glance. "What do you want to see?" His accent was now inexplicably northeastern. "Do you believe that I'll scare you out of the closet the moment I take off my pants?" Faced with such a shameless person and vulgar words, the 3 guards rolled their eyes and were speechless. "This cubicle is only so big. Do you think I can crawl into the toilet and run away?" Feng Bujue said. While the guards were distracted, he swung his hand and closed the door of the cubicle. "If you're so worried, just lie on the ground and watch my feet." At this point, the guards couldn't say anything more. Of course, they didn't have to lie down to look at Brother Jew's feet. They only had to squat down to see. The bottom of the cubicle's door was about 12 centimeters away from the ground. As long as the people outside squatted down, not only would they be able to see Feng Bujue's shoes, they would also be able to see his ankles. Therefore, the guards did not have to worry about him using the shoe removal trick to make any strange movements. In the next few minutes, the atmosphere in the toilet became very strange. 3 men squatting outside a cubicle with a suspicious attitude and monitoring another man's excretion process. This was indeed strange. From the situation under the cubicle, Feng Bujue should already be sitting on the toilet, but the guards didn't smell the stench for a long time, nor did they hear anything fall into the water. It wasn't until 3 minutes later that there was a sudden plop sound from inside the cubicle. The next second, there was the sound of the toilet flushing and the sound of Brother Jew quickly turning on the air freshener nozzle. From a logical perspective, his series of actions were quite reasonable. Many people would have similar experiences. For example, when you were in a public toilet and heard or knew that there was someone waiting outside the cubicle, at this time, if a stench wafted out, it would be somewhat embarrassing. However, this was the logic of a normal person in the real world. Feng Bujue was not a normal person, and his actions were naturally not to cover up the stench. Brother Jew's actions were obviously to create the illusion that he was really going to the toilet to relieve himself, and he really did relieve himself. Only in this way could he cover up what he was really doing in the cubicle. Phew! After the series of actions, Feng Bujue immediately let out a long sigh and said, "Everyone, don't panic." He raised his voice and said to the guards outside the cubicle, "I still need to clean up." At this moment, the guards outside the cubicle were too embarrassed to exchange glances because the atmosphere was as awkward as it could be. Brother Jew's words made it sound like the 3 of them were urging him to take a dump outside. Just like that, after another minute, the cubicle door opened. Feng Bujue quickly walked out, turned the corner, and went straight to the sink. At that moment, the 3 guards subconsciously looked into the cubicle, but in less than 2 seconds, their eyes followed Brother Jew's figure and moved away. They did not find anything unusual in the cubicle, and did not take a second look. After all, the cubicle was so narrow that they could see everything in one glance. Okay. 10 seconds later, Feng Bujue quickly washed his hands and walked out of the toilet. "Let's go, don't let the lady wait for too long." Before he finished speaking, he had already walked out of the toilet, and the 3 guards followed closely behind. At this point, Brother Jew's act of going to the toilet was over. At least, from the guards' point of view, there was nothing unusual. However, 10 seconds after the 4 of them left the toilet creak, the door of the cubicle that Feng Bujue had used earlier moved when no one was touching it. Then, a thin, stooped figure flashed out from the corner behind the door. Hiss hiss hiss. It worked. After Musashi stood still, he lowered his voice and let out his signature weird laugh. The place where he appeared was the blind spot between the door and the wall. Looking from above, it was a triangular area. The area was very small, and it was impossible for an adult to squeeze into this space. But Musashi Kojima could. In terms of setting, he was a boy in the 3rd grade of primary school, and his body was tall and thin. However, with just these 2 points, he couldn't hide in the corner because that place was too narrow. Otherwise, the guards wouldn't have completely ignored him. The key point for Musashi Kojima to be able to hide in the corner was that he was a character from a ridiculous anime. Also, one of his abilities in the anime was to twist his body and turn himself into a noodle or even a piece of paper. Then, he would spin at high speed and create multiple afterimages of his face. Although the description alone would make people think that this was some kind of combat ability, it was not. There is not much time. When Musashi Kojima walked out of the cubicle, he was still holding 2 Mark II grenades in his hand. He muttered, "I have to hurry." On the other hand, Fong Bujue, who had finished peeing, was led by Dr. Cox to take another elevator. This time, their destination was the left half of the base, the basement. I hope going back underground won't remind you of the terrible experience not long ago, when the elevator started to move, Dr. Cox said without turning his head. What? The decor of the basement. Is it the same as the simulation of the former Soviet Union's underground laboratory? Fong Bujue asked. Before Dr. Cox replied, the elevator had already reached the floor. Buzz buzz buzz, with the sound of the elevator door opening, a silver, bright corridor appeared in front of everyone. The 4 sides of the corridor were made of a metal that Fong Bujue couldn't identify. At first glance, it looked like silver or stainless steel, but it revealed a sense of heaviness that was incomparable to the two. The lighting in the corridor was light strips embedded in the walls and ceiling. This was the same equipment that Fong Bujue saw in room 15. Although the appearance, details, and technology are very different, but, Cox said as she walked out of the elevator, the basic structure of our floor is indeed very similar to the underground laboratory. It is formed by many intersecting corridors. As she spoke, she walked forward. Fong Bujue, surrounded by 3 guards, followed the doctor's footsteps. After walking out of the elevator, they walked 7 or 8 meters before they arrived at the first intersection. At this moment, Cox suddenly stopped and turned to face the wall of the corridor. He stretched out his hand and touched it gently. Beep beep. 1 second later, 2 short, soft beeps were immediately heard. Then, on the wall that the doctor touched, an area of about 40 centimeters square lit up like a monitor. This kind of device was not a rare thing in this world. In this corridor, there would be a small screen area on the wall that could display images. As long as the staff of the Foundation touched the screen area with their finger, a complete electronic map would be displayed. The map would also indicate the current coordinates of the person who touched the screen. The technology tree on your side is obviously not crooked. There are quite a few things that are quite convenient. Fong Bujue looked at the doctor's action and immediately understood the principle of the device on the wall. How about on your side? Cox finished looking at the map and continued walking. As she walked, she responded, all the technology is used on interdimensional travel, life cycle, and various weapons of war? Her question was undoubtedly a test. Based on her observation of all the SCP-3232-1 players that had appeared so far, it was not surprising that she came to this conclusion. Haha, you will know in a while. Fong Bujue smiled mysteriously and replied in a low voice. Brother Ju's reply had a double meaning. On the surface, it sounded like he was saying, when I explain the theory behind SCP-3232 to you, you will understand. But in reality, what Brother Ju meant was, wait a little longer. When Musashi's Koganui causes a commotion, you will be able to see with your own eyes the various super-dimensional powers that I can use. However, just when Feng Bujue thought that his plan was almost complete, a shocking change occurred. Main mission has been changed. At that moment, the system's voice suddenly rang in Brother Ju's ears, causing him to be shocked. What? The main mission has been changed? Indeed, this did not make sense. The system's goal was clear. It was to have Feng Bujue stop the Golden Foundation from investigating Thriller Paradise. With that as the premise, why would the main mission change? Something is not right. Brother Ju quickly opened the game menu and looked at the changed mission content. Your plan has been exposed. What? Feng Bujue could not believe his eyes. He repeated it twice in his mind with different tones. What? At that moment, the content that appeared in Brother Ju's quest tab could no longer be called a mission. It was more like the system was communicating with him through the quest tab. 15 seconds ago, Musashi Kagane was captured by the Golden Foundation. Before Feng Bujue could recover, another system announcement entered his ears. This time, the system skipped the step of updating the task panel and directly used voice to send the message to Feng Bujue. How is this possible? Even with this extremely strange change, Brother Ju maintained a high level of alertness and thought quickly. Could it be that the Golden Foundation has used some kind of method to interfere with the system? Or this voice does not come from the system at all but is a disguise used by the Golden Foundation? His hypothesis was quite plausible, but it was quickly rejected by him. There was a possibility that the voice was disguised, but the information that appeared in the player's menu, the Golden Foundation could not have interfered with that. There were nanomachines in the coffee you drank. The next announcement was like a bolt of lightning that lit up Brother Ju's mind. At this moment, the visual signal received by your pupils and the auditory signal received by your eardrums have been synchronized. This F***cur. Feng Bujue started to curse in his mind. Hearing this, he understood instantly. His summoning of Musashi Kagane in the toilet, his use of the endless grenade box, and the fact that he had secretly given Musashi Kagane missions had all been exposed. But that was not the reason he was cursing. Feng Bujue's anger came from a sense of defeat, a feeling that he had not experienced before, the feeling of being one step behind. Of course, this did not mean that he was inferior to his opponent in terms of strategy or acting. The one step that Brother Ju was lacking had nothing to do with people. He did not lose in the game between people, but he lost in the knowledge and technology of this dimension that was several hundred years ahead of his own dimension. He was like a strategist who had transmigrated from ancient times to modern battlefield. Even though this strategist was many times more brilliant than the staff officers of the modern era in terms of strategy and tactics, he could still be easily defeated by a bug. The game menu and system announcement are sensed by brainwaves and cannot be detected. Now, please follow my instructions. Just as Feng Bujue was trying to understand the situation before him, the system of Thriller Paradise referred to itself as me and started to give him direct orders. Chapter 1153. This was something that had never happened before, or at least, Feng Bujue had not experienced it before. He had not heard anything like this from any of the players that he knew. However, at this very moment it had indeed happened. Perhaps this is an illusion created by the Foundation or some kind of SCP project housed by the Foundation? After Brother Ju calmed down, he came up with a possible hypothesis. Now is not the time and place for you to question. The system could read Feng Bujue's inner thoughts, and it immediately said, "The containment room that Cox is bringing you to is made from the modified SCP-148. Once you enter it, the connection between you and your projected character will be cut off. Then, you will be disconnected from the game, and Feng Bujue, this character, will be trapped in this dimension like a vegetable. The next time you log into the game, you will not be able to find the character's data, and you will be prompted to create a new character. When that was said, Fong Bujua thought, the Foundation can do something like this? Many years ago, they were able to trap Billy in this dimension. Technically speaking, it is not that hard to trap you. Then why haven't any of the previous players been captured? Fong Bujua asked the system directly through his inner monologue. Other than you, no other player has successfully broken through the sandbox. That was a convincing reason we're here. Just as Brother Ju was communicating with the system, Professor Cox had brought him to the door of a containment room. By then, there were 4 fully armed assault soldiers waiting at the door. The outer wall of this room was indeed different from the surrounding corridors. Project Code, SCP-148 Project Grade, Euclid Special Containment Measure. SCP-148 needs to be stored in the form of 120 10 kg ingot. Due to the potential for unpredictable reactions, the ingots of SCP-148 are not to be stored at the same site as other SCP projects. In addition, the ingots mentioned above are to be evenly distributed among Foundation facilities that meet the requirements and require them. Under no circumstances, the SCP with the power of conscious interference should not come into contact with SCP-148. When such contact occurs, the nearby area should be cleared, and the affected SCP-148 samples should be detonated from afar. The quality of each ingot should be measured every month and the data should be reported. The relevant personnel must not be in contact with SCP-148 for more than 3 weeks. Any personnel assigned to work with SCP-148 are required to undergo periodic mental examinations. Description: SCP-148 is a substance with metallic characteristics. It is composed of many known and unknown elements. Currently, the total amount of SCP-148 in the Foundation's possession is about 1.2 tons. SCP-148 was grayish-green in color and would rapidly oxidize in the presence of water. SCP-148 has a melting point of about 4,500 degrees Celsius and a boiling point of about 9,000 degrees Celsius. The density of SCP-148 is between 620 g/cm3 and 676 g/cm3. The hardness of SCP-148 is HRC-39 according to the Rockwell hardness test. Its strength, plasticity, and processability are similar to platinum. SCP-148 was mainly composed of platinum and iridium. These two metals made up 62% and 20% of its mass respectively. Other than that, there were several other known materials, including iron, cobalt, and copper. These 3 metals made up 16.5% of SCP-148's mass. However, considering its total mass, SCP-148 obviously contained substances that could not be detected by mass spectrometry. Through the scanning tunneling microscope, SCP-148's image showed that there were gaps in its crystal lattice structure that should be filled by other materials. SCP-148 showed the ability to block or obstruct the power of conscious interference of nearby organisms. Although this effect was difficult to quantify, it seemed to be inversely proportional to the square of the distance between the target and SCP-148's surface, and proportional to the amount of SCP-148. The range of this effect that could be detected was about 1480. 8 meters per kilogram of SCP-148. SCP-148 was recovered from the Metallurgy Department during the Foundation's sweep of the Prometheus Laboratories facilities. According to the computer records related to this project, this material was originally going to be sold to. The trademark and product name were both mind-blocking alloy. However, due to the political fallout from removed and the destruction of the Prometheus Laboratories facilities, Oblocht had already sold the entire batch of SCP-148, estimated to be 13 tons, to an unknown buyer. The Foundation's agents and legal personnel are currently investigating the source of the remaining SCP-148. That was all Feng Bujue knew about SCP-148. Even if he ignored the keywords like improvement and mass production mentioned by the system, this thing was still a very dangerous substance. Those who came into contact with SCP-148 on a regular basis or were overexposed to it would gradually lose their speech and communication skills over time until they completely disappeared. After about 50 days, the affected personnel would become completely mute, and they would not be able to understand or make any requests, orders, or statements other than spoken words. Although Feng Bujue could not confirm whether the voice in his ears was the system's or not, he knew that, if the room in front of him was really made entirely out of SCP-148, then he definitely could not enter. Kill the guards and kidnap the professor. Move out now. 2 seconds later, the system spoke again. Why are you helping me? But Feng Bujue did not move. He did not walk into the room, and he did not launch an attack. Instead, he asked internally, "What are you? I am not helping you. I am helping myself. You are the only person who has successfully broken through the Foundation's sandbox to come to this world. I need you to remove the threat from this world so that I can sever my connection with this world." You are the system? Feng Bujue asked again. You can call me that. I thought you were omniscient. Not entirely. What do you mean? There is no time to explain. That was not wrong. Just as Feng Bujue was conversing with the system, "Hey, Mr. Feng Bujue." Cox saw him standing there, spacing out, and she urged, "What are you doing?" When she said this, she quietly took a few steps back. As for the 3 guards and the 4 commandos, they all clenched the weapons in their hands and quickly surrounded her. It looked like if Brother Bujue did not make a decision soon, these people were going to use brute force. "TSK. There is nothing I can do." The next second, Feng Bujue grumbled internally. He quickly reached his hand into his inventory and activated the effect of the Pearl of Thunder. With the effect of thunder, his speed was so fast that he could disappear from everyone's sight. In just 5 seconds, the 4 assault team members and 3 guards were all lying flat on the ground. From Dr. Cox's point of view, these 7 people looked as if they had fainted on their own. However, there was a bloody hole at the back of each of their necks caused by sharp finger. You. When Cox saw Feng Bujue's figure again, she seemed to have something else to say. But Brother Ju's hand instantly clamped around the doctor's neck and lifted her off the ground. From now on, I ask and you answer. He paused for half a second and continued with a cold expression, "Don't talk nonsense, don't lie, don't play tricks. I won't give you a second chance. If you don't do as I say, I won't hesitate to kill you." At this point, Brother Ju paused for 2 seconds before he released his grip. He knew that even if he released his grip, the doctor would not run because the doctor knew that escape and resistance were futile. Cough. Cough. After Cox's feet touched the ground again, she coughed violently. Then, she took a few deep breaths before she managed to catch her breath. At that moment, Feng Bujue's question arrived. How do I neutralize the effect of that cup of coffee? The way he asked this question was also well thought out. He did not mention the actual effect of the coffee, and he did not mention the term nanomachines. He used a very general way to get the doctor to voluntarily reveal some information so that he could confirm whether the system was telling the truth or not. You. Cox's first reaction was to ask, "How did you know there was something wrong with that cup of coffee?" But just as the word "you" left her lips, she quickly stopped herself. Stop wasting time, stop lying, and stop playing tricks, those were the clear instructions that she had just received. In reality, the workers in the surveillance room did not notice the professor's action, but the graph analysis program that came with the surveillance equipment would not miss this detail. as long as it was something that appeared in Feng Bujue's sight, even if it was something that he did not notice personally, something that was only in his peripheral vision. When it was transmitted to the screen in the surveillance room, it would be scanned and analyzed in detail by the computer. Cox wanted to use this to send a message to her colleagues. She wanted them to kill Brother Ju and stop trying to capture him alive. But she did not expect this trick, that should have been impossible to be discovered by Feng Bujue. "Let me tell you," Feng Bujue continued after 2 seconds, "I was already in a bad mood today. 2 minutes ago I was in a very bad mood. But now—" He suddenly stopped and let out a long sigh. "Phew. Forget it. I'll give you one more chance." Cox sighed in relief. "Okay. I promise I won't play any more tricks. I'll bring you to the 3rd floor." Screech. Before she could finish her sentence, a hole had already appeared on her neck. Her life had also come to an end. "I gave her an inch and she wanted a mile." Feng Bujue looked at the doctor's body and muttered softly. Then, he asked in his heart, "Okay. Continue." Then, the system voice replied, "Cut off one of her hands and take the elevator to the 4th floor. The ambush team on the 3rd floor has already made their move. You must enter and activate the elevator within 47 seconds. Chapter 1154. 47 seconds was not a long time, but for Feng Bujue, it was enough time for him to do a lot of things. 5 seconds later, Brother Ju used the blade of mandatory defense penetration to cleanly cut off Cox's right hand. Then, he picked up the bloody hand and ran to the elevator at an astonishing speed. All electronic doors and elevator buttons in this facility require the fingerprints of Foundation personnel to activate. The system knew that Feng Bujue did not need to look at the map to get back to the elevator, so the system began to tell him what to pay attention to. "After I enter the elevator, what if they remotely control it to stop?" Feng Bujue thought to himself as he ran. "Destroy the top of the elevator and use Jeppo to reach the 4th floor." "Isn't there a staircase here?" Brother Ju asked. "There are no staircases in this building, but there are 6 elevators that can go up and down. You are currently using the one closest to you. Why don't I just destroy the ceiling or the floor to go through the floors?" When Feng Bujue asked this question, he was already at the elevator door. He used the professor's finger to press the button next to the door. Ding! A second later, the elevator door opened. It seemed that, after Brother Ju and the others left, the elevator had been parked on this floor. Before the door fully opened, Feng Bujue stepped in and raised the professor's hand to press the 4F and the close door button. There is a thick wall between the floors. This wall is made of a special alloy that is unique to this world. It is very difficult to break through. The system's response was not as fast as Brother Ju's. "So, if I want to move between the floors, I have to use the elevator or go through the vertical passage where the elevator is," Feng Bujue said. "Yes." Clang. Just as the system finished its sentence, the elevator stopped. Without a doubt, this elevator was stopped by someone who was remotely controlling it. Even though Feng Bujue did arrive there in 47 seconds, he was still under the surveillance of others, so this was not surprising. There is no safety window at the top of the elevator. Thus, the system gave him a new notification. Understood. Feng Bujue knew what this meant. He immediately performed a beautiful backflip and performed a Rankyaku kick. The Azure Combat Energy cut through the metal plate above Brother Ju's head easily. However, the opening was long and irregular. It was not large enough for a person to pass through. "It's sturdier than I thought." Brother Ju looked at the opening and muttered. Obviously, according to his imagination, he should be able to kick out a gap big enough for a person to pass through, but the actual situation was a little different from his prediction. But it's still acceptable. In the next second, Brother Ju twisted his body and performed another kick. The shock wave from the second kick was about 30% stronger than the previous one. It successfully widened the gap by a few centimeters. Jeppo, rise 31.7 meters. The height of a 5-story building is more than 30 meters. Fong Bujua said, but he did not stop moving. Before he finished his sentence, he had already leaped up and flew out of the opening at the top of the elevator. He shot up like a cannonball. The height of every floor of this building is different. Among them, there are large storage rooms on the first basement floor and the third basement floor. Therefore, they are taller than the other floors. The areas of these two floors that are of normal height are filled with hidden spaces or thickened defensive walls. When the system was replying, Fong Bujua had already reached the height of the fourth floor and used the special effect of void walk to float in midair. What should I do with the door in front? Brother Ju's next question actually had another way of asking it, and that was, should I tear this open as well? Use no less than 80 kilograms of force to break it open. The system's reply indicated that he did not need to do so. Fong Bujua heard this and immediately put Cox's right hand into his shirt pocket. He then went forward to break open the door. A mere 80 kilograms of force was nothing to him. With the physical fitness of a level 50 player, he could lift a 100-kilogram object with one hand. Creak, creak, creak. Soon, the elevator door on this floor was easily pushed open by him with brute force. After Fong Bujua stepped onto the fourth floor, he took out Cox's right hand and searched for the touch screen to search for the map. I can show you the way, the system said. No need. Fong Bujua rejected the system. Even in this situation, he still did not want to blindly follow the system's instructions. Tell me which room I'm going to, and then quickly explain to me how to remove the nanomachines. His suggestion was reasonable. He could look at the map now anyway, but he needed someone to tell him how to remove the nanomachines. Your destination is operating room 416. The system did not waste any time and immediately followed Brother Ju's instructions. There are 4 ways to remove the nanomachines. Based on your specific body condition, the fastest way is to use the special magnetic field generator in the operating room to directly suck the nanomachines out of your body. Isn't that the same as? Fong Bujua browsed and memorized the map in front of him while diverting his attention to ask, having metal embedded in the body, and still having to do an MRI? Similar, but the size of the nanomachines is at the molecular level. It won't cause too much damage when removed. It won't cause too much damage, which means there will still be damage, Fong Bujua said. Your retina and eardrums will be damaged when the nanomachines are removed, the system said. It is recommended that you prepare the forest of trees in advance so that you can repair the damaged parts and restore your vision and hearing. Understood, Brother Ju replied and turned to leave. During the 10 seconds of communication with the system, he had already memorized the entire map of the 4th floor. Therefore, he started to run. Attention, after 5 seconds, the 2 guards will appear at your 9 o'clock, about 4 meters away. When Fong Bujua heard the words 5 seconds, he had already guessed what the system was going to say. At that moment, his intuition drove him to take out his spiritual weapon. When he heard the words 4 meters away, 2 poker cards that were flashing with black light were already out of his hand and flew to the corner in front of him. In the past, the special effect of the death poker or soul-seeking, the spiritual weapon will always fly to the target that the owner wants to attack, was already able to attack targets outside the owner's line of sight. Now, the special effect of the Psycho Poker or Psycho Poker's attack speed and hit rate are extremely high, so its driver's license was revoked, was an enhanced version of this skill. Its hit rate and speed were even better. When Fong Bujua ran past the fork, he didn't even turn his head. The 2 screams that he heard were enough to tell him that his attack had hit its target. In 4 seconds, 3 people at your 3 o'clock. Then, the system sent another message. This time, the message was more concise and comprehensive. Brother Ju understood what it meant. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Half a second later, 3 streaks of black light and 3 whistling sounds could be heard. Once again, the enemies that had yet to appear in front of him were taken care of. At that moment, the staff in the surveillance room on the right side of the base were in a state of panic. They couldn't hear the system voice, so they couldn't understand how Brother Ju was able to predict the attack. At least, from the visual and auditory signals they received, Feng Bujue launched the attack without seeing or hearing anything. In 15 seconds at your 12 o'clock, 4 people are lying in ambush on both sides of the intersection. On the other hand, Feng Bujue was still moving forward in the corridor on the 4th floor of the left side of the base. The system's notification didn't stop. The 2 of them were like experienced drivers and an excellent navigation system. They cooperated seamlessly and were unstoppable. The forces that were lying in ambush on the 3rd floor have arrived on this floor through another elevator. There are 25 of them in total. They are currently moving toward your destination. Are they the fully armed assault troops? Feng Bujue asked. What is the difference in combat ability between them and the security guards? The Foundation in this dimension has a certain difference in personnel structure from the Foundation you know. Those assault troops are a mixed troop of general facility security personnel and special mobile forces. All the personnel have excellent combat experience and equipment. But, Feng Bujue continued, they still can't pose a threat to me. The point is not whether you can kill them, but what will happen after you kill them, the system said. If you kill this group of people, or demonstrate an uncontrollable ability that leaves them completely helpless, then the site director of this base will immediately call for backup. Feng Bujue understood immediately. He answered in his heart, if that's the case, the information about SCP-3232's actual threat will be leaked out. Even now, this information can be leaked out at any time, the system said. Therefore, you need to continue to attract their attention. However, before the base is cut off from the outside world, you cannot be captured, and you cannot defeat the assault troop. This sure is difficult. Brother Bujue grumbled as he picked up his pace. Turn right up ahead. There are already 10 security guards in the corridor outside the control room. It is recommended that you use Rankyaku. Humph. You don't need to give me such a warning, Feng Bujue said as he darted around the corner and raised his leg to kick. In an instant, a burst of combat energy swept through the corridor. This kick tore open the metal walls on both sides of the corridor. The security guards standing in the corridor were cut in half at the waist without being able to react. In an instant, the corridor was filled with cries of agony and blood splattered everywhere. Feng Bujue did not hesitate or stop. He stepped on the blood and intestines with an expressionless face and used his fastest speed to reach the door of control room 416. Buzz, buzz, buzz. 3 seconds later, he used Professor Cox's fingerprint to pass through the security scanner and stepped into the room without stopping. The device is here, I see it. After entering the room, Feng Bujue immediately knew which device he needed to use. He quickly interrupted the system and walked to the control panel next to the device. Turn the 4 switches on the upper right corner and the 2 switches on the lower left corner up. Leave the rest unchanged. Enter W7831N in the center box, then press the red button. Then, enter the start time on the numeric keypad and lie down on the magnetic field generator before the countdown ends. The system did not waste any time. It immediately gave a new set of instructions based on Brother Ju's actions. Feng Bujue listened while he completed the operation. When the system finished speaking, he was already lying down on the metal terminal of the device with Usu Rulin in his hand. Buzz buzz. Feng Bujue set the startup time to only 3 seconds, so as soon as he lay down, the special magnetic field generator was already running. The principle of this device was not complicated. It could generate a magnetic field that only worked on a certain type of metal, according to the user's needs. Brother Ju chose the mode that only worked on the nanomachines in his body. Although he did not know what material the nanomachines were made of, it did not matter. The system already gave him the specific activation method. PSSH. The moment the magnetic field was generated, Feng Bujue's eyes suddenly bled, and 2 wounds appeared on both sides of his temples. The blood that splashed out quickly turned black in the air and condensed into a rust-like substance that was firmly attached to the metal panel at the top of the magnetic field generator. Feng Bujue, under such intense pain, still did not make a sound. His face was expressionless. To be honest, in the face of this degree of pain, it was normal for him to scream at the top of his lungs. But he did not want to scream, because he was in a bad mood. Very bad. You can use the orb now. 2 seconds later, the system prompted again. This was directly transmitted to the brain, so even if Brother Ju's eardrums were damaged, he could still hear it. When Feng Bujue activated the orb, he leaped up from the ground and asked internally, "Is it time to cut off the communication?" After opening the door, immediately attack the wall in front of you. The system did not answer his question. Instead, it gave him the next instruction. At this time, Feng Bujue opened the door and instantly understood why the system did not answer his question. "Raise your hands." After the electronic door opened, Brother Ju immediately heard a loud shout. At the same time, the buzzing sound of dozens of laser guns being charged rang out in the corridor on both sides of the door. What's on the other side of the wall? In this dangerous situation, Feng Bujue remained calm. He wanted to ask clearly before making a move. The system's answer was simple and clear. SCP-426. The spy war surrounding this project was probably the most far-sighted and effective plan the Splitters had ever carried out. Item code: SCP-884 Project Grade Euclid is Special Containment Procedures. Due to the incident that occurred on January 11, Year 20, data masked. All contact with SCP-884-4 is prohibited. All requests to inspect or test SCP-884-4 are to be submitted directly to O5, data masked, for approval. SCP-884-4 is to be stored in the deep storage area of data masked facility. Description: SCP-884-4 is a shaving mirror for men. It is made of glass and ivory. The year of its manufacture is estimated to be around 1914. This item was originally part of a set of male grooming tools, but the other parts of the set were lost in experiments and theft at the beginning of this century. Famous examples include SCP-884-2, also known as Razor, which was stolen by the Chaos Insurgency when they broke away from the Foundation. SCP-884-6, also known as Comb, was invalidated after the accident in SCP-884-6-4172. For information on other SCP-884 accessories, please refer to Data Masked. SCP-884-4 has a mild hallucinogenic effect. Experimental subjects who use this project to shave will have the illusion that their hair hasn't decreased. After that, they will continuously attempt to shave the areas of their face that have been shaved clean. This hallucination often causes the experimental subjects to become anxious. In one experiment, it even caused the experimental subject to accidentally sever his carotid artery. In fact, based on the project's information, SCP-884 was not a particularly dangerous project. It could be categorized as safe. However, it had a hidden characteristic, and the information related to this characteristic was deleted from the Foundation's database by a member of the Chaos Insurgency. This characteristic was that after 4 to 7 years of exposure to SCP-884-4, the affected subjects would start to have a regular sense of doubt. This symptom was initially difficult to detect until the affected subjects showed behaviors such as constantly checking the reports and experiment results, going back and forth to check whether the door was locked or not. The early symptoms were no different from mild obsessive-compulsive disorder. In the following 2 to 6 years, the effect would worsen and gradually evolve into an extreme difficulty in making choices. In the end, the affected subjects would not even be able to make the simplest and most insignificant choice until they completely lost the ability to make decisions. Many years ago, the Chaos Splitter had used this characteristic of SCP-884 to launch a very clever psychological warfare. They deliberately took away the information related to the long-term symptoms, then continued to show a strong desire for SCP-884-4. In one operation, they were even willing to sacrifice more than 20 members to snatch it. In this way, the Foundation naturally spared no effort to investigate and contact this project. Because of this, the number of people in the organization who were affected by this project increased. Many of these people eventually completely lost their ability to make decisions, and many of them unfortunately died in the future. The cause of their deaths was related to being unable to make a decision at a critical moment. Of course, this conspiracy was eventually uncovered after a certain undercover agent returned with crucial information. The mastermind of the entire project was undoubtedly Dr. Sorts, who defected with the information. After all, it was a meme scientist who came up with a plan. It was indeed a good plan. Well, after saying so much, I just want to tell everyone in this era, there are no longer any external enemies that can confront or threaten the Foundation. After some major events controlled by the Foundation behind the scenes, the world has changed according to their will. This has allowed them to obtain an inexhaustible supply of D-class personnel. Moreover, the organization has also found a way to duplicate loyal agents, and there are countless agents like D-19. Therefore, projects like mine, which had the ability to influence people's minds, could cause an irreversible cognitive crisis, and could be used to deal with the Foundation. In this era, it was regarded as a low-level threat. Almost without exception, it was classified as safe. Chua, 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 accompanied by the strange sound of combat energy tearing through metal. The wall of the containment room was sliced open by someone's bare hands. Since I don't have the ability to move on my own, and I'm not an active project that requires special materials to suppress, my containment room is very ordinary. There are no specially made or reinforced external walls, and there are no automatic defense or self-detonation devices. When Fong Bujue used Flying Dragon Fist of the Southern Dipper to break open the wall and rushed into the room, the sound of laser guns firing could be heard from the corridor behind him. The assault troops were using pulse weapons, and they were the kind that could accurately track the heat source. They didn't need to be good at marksmanship. They just needed to aim and they would be able to hit the target. Plus, they didn't have to worry about accidentally injuring their own people. So, in the 3 seconds before Brother Ju broke through the wall, almost all of the assault troops opened fire without hesitation. The laser guns in their hands were like electric sparks in an electrostatic ball, and they hit Fong Bujue's back. Fortunately, Fong Bujue was in a state where all his equipment and skills were activated. His defense was very high. Chapter 1156. Following the system's instructions, Feng Bujue drank a bottle of life points recovery potion as he ran toward the corridor. This replenished the life points that he had lost earlier. Then, following the system's instructions, he ran all the way back to the entrance of the corridor. Due to Brother Ju's previous actions, the Foundation did not send any guards to stop him. From their perspective, this kind of action was no different from a suicide mission. The door of this corridor is very sturdy. It is recommended that you summon Ma Sun to destroy it. Understood. At this point, Feng Bujue basically obeyed the system's instructions. After he answered in his heart, he summoned Ma Sunday. However, the spirit general's shadow that was shining with golden light suddenly appeared and slashed with its blade. After a set of Chinese slash dance, the metal door before him was reduced to a pile of metal shards. Buzz. However, the next second, a dense net of laser beams appeared before Brother Ju. The net of laser beams was layered and intertwined in a disorderly manner. Furthermore, each beam was moving at a constant speed. This defensive measure extended all the way to the other end of the corridor. Even a fly might not be able to fly through it, much less a human. What should I do? Destroy the top of the corridor and run through it. You must reach the other end within 30 seconds and re-enter the building. You must hold your breath during the process. This notification reminded Feng Bujue of something. What's happening outside the building? The atmosphere of this Earth is no longer suitable for human survival. Breathing the air outside might cause harm to your body. I see. Feng Bujue mumbled to himself as he controlled Ma Sun to open up a path. Opening up a hole at the top of the corridor was not difficult. After he was done, Brother Ju jumped out and sprinted toward the top of the corridor. In less than 20 seconds, he had reached the other end of the corridor. Then, he used the same method to cut open the ceiling under his feet. After he jumped back into the corridor, he cut open the door that connected to the other end of the corridor. Just like that, he successfully returned to the right side of the corridor. The main control room is on the 3rd floor. The base commander has already deduced your target. All the forces in the right half of the base have been transferred to the 3rd floor to set up a defense. Then, directly approach the target's room from the 2nd floor, then blow open the ceiling. Feng Bujue's mind immediately reflected the most reasonable strategy. What do you think? This is the best plan at the moment, but the walls of the main control room are all reinforced with superalloy, and this doesn't include the defensive layer between the 2nd and 3rd floors, the system replied. It is recommended that you use the Super Death Ma Sun Golden Double Fist Hammer on the target area to destroy the stability of the superalloy structure, and then use the trick you used to break through the elevator car to break through. Okay, lead the way. Feng Bujue had no objections and replied decisively. 2 minutes later, Brother Ju arrived at the corridor below the main control room. Just as the system said, all the forces in the right half of the base had been transferred to the 3rd floor, so Feng Bujue was not stopped at all. The default duration of Ma Sun's existence was 5 minutes. Brother Ju still had Alchemist King's Taunt, which could extend this duration by a few minutes. Therefore, Ma Sun's time limit was still left, and he could continue to fight. After you go up, do your best to destroy the equipment in the control room. As long as the control room is destroyed, the means of communication between the base and the outside world will be cut off. In other words, other means of communication other than means of communication still exist? When Feng Bujue asked this question, he had already controlled Ma Sun to start punching the ceiling. Existence, the system replied. Those projects that, if the containment fails, it will trigger a nuclear attack program, all have an independent communication mechanism. I understand. Feng Bujue sneered. He understood the system's plan as soon as he heard it. As long as he went up there to cause a ruckus and cut off the Foundation's communication channel regarding SCP-3232, then the mission would basically be completed. What he needed to do next was simple. He just needed to find an extremely dangerous project that would trigger a nuclear attack the moment it was released and destroy its containment mechanism. Bang 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 bang. Just as Brother Ju was communicating with the system, Ma Sun's attacks had already deformed the ceiling above his head and made it rumble. It's done. Following the confirmation from the system, Feng Bujue stepped on the ground and twisted his body. With a spin, he launched an upward electric venomous dragon drill. A few seconds later, like a human drill, he drilled into the control room on the 3rd floor. After that, the system urged him again. They are preparing to send information to the outside world. Please destroy it as soon as possible. Feng Bujue didn't need to be urged. As soon as he reached the 3rd floor, he used both hands to support himself on the ground, did a split, and used all his strength to execute a Rankyaku, Zhou. Then, he changed to using one hand to support himself on the ground, turned his body sideways, and kicked in all directions at the same time. I'll name this move Rankyaku, Revolving Lotus. What do you think? Since there was no one around, Feng Bujue directly started a conversation with the system. A no comment. Just as the system said that, current quest completed. All main quests have been completed. You have completed the scenario. You will be automatically teleported out after 180 seconds. After this update, the time spent in a solo scenario has been changed to 180 seconds. Finally, 2 familiar system announcements appeared to tell Feng Bujue that his quest in this scenario had been completed. Phew. In a way, this scenario was quite easy. Feng Bujue sighed in relief. At the same time, inside the Real Foundation's facility, Dr. Cox, who sat behind her desk, also sighed in relief. She looked at Feng Bujue on the big screen before her and revealed a smug smile. 2 seconds later, a colleague from the observation team praised the doctor in the communication channel. Doctor, the well-done evaluation should have been given to you. When he said that, there was an obvious burst of laughter coming from the side. It looked like the workers in the observation room were quite satisfied with the result of this experiment. Ha! It's okay. This is not the first time I've pretended to be a system. Cox pressed the button on the communicator and replied, but this is the first time I've communicated directly with an object and said so many words. At this point, her eyes could not help but turn to Brother Ju on the screen. But this player called Feng Bujue is indeed very good. Even if we ignore the data and focus on the brain, he is the best player I've seen so far. That's not wrong. The voice in the communication channel said. After all, he is the first player to successfully break through the 2nd floor of the mirror world. I wonder if there will be other players who can do it in the future. I don't think that's possible, Cox replied. At the end of the day, the universe they are in, or rather the era, is far less advanced than ours. In their world, even in East Asia and Europe, where the average IQ is the highest, the average IQ of an adult is no more than 110. But here, since the introduction of genetic modification technology, 95% of the people have an IQ above 130 in the preschool test. Combined with the difference in technology and education, we will be much more ahead of them when we reach adulthood. At this point, she paused for 2 seconds before continuing. And this Feng Bujue before us is without a doubt an extreme example. Apart from himself, the others could not even sense the existence of the hint, but not only did he successfully decipher the hint given by the real system of the 1st layer, he had also swiftly grasped the hint given by the system of the 2nd layer which he had impersonated. Unfortunately, that's all there is to it. The professor's tone changed slightly, and he continued with melancholy. At the end of the day, it is still the difference in dimensions. When he reached the 2nd floor of the mirror world, an environment where all the details are under our control, He will not be able to escape the fate of being a marionette. Obviously, at that moment, Professor Cox thought that everything was over. But just as she started to chat with her colleagues, ha, Fong Bujue, who was on the screen, started to laugh for no reason. When he started to laugh, the laughter on the faces of Professor Cox and the observers disappeared instantly. 2 seconds later, the professor quickly leaned back to the screen. Her eyes were glued to the various readings on the screen. Her hands were placed back on the keyboard, ready to press the button to speak. All right, that's enough acting. After a few seconds of laughter, Fong Bujue continued. Since we've cleared the scenario, I'll chat with you for a while longer. He raised his head and said weakly, I don't know who you are, but I know you're not the system. He paused for half a second, then said, the real system. After I entered the second floor of the sandbox, it only gave me 2 prompts, which were the 2 prompts half a minute ago. Hearing his words, the observation room, which had been full of excitement just now, suddenly fell silent. Professor Cox, who was sitting at the desk and responsible for pretending to be the system, also widened her eyes. She did not know how to respond. You're the one who lifted the restriction on me, and you're the one who changed the mission. Fong Bujue continued. I think I did a good job. After reading the information on SCP-3232, I immediately understood your intention of changing the mission, and this became the basis for you to pretend to be the system. He smiled again. Speaking of which, if I couldn't see through the hidden message of the mission to destroy all observation records of SCP-3232 in the Foundation, wouldn't it be difficult for you? In that case, you would have to give an additional explanation for the system directly giving orders to the player. Since Lu Zhou said this, Professor Cox knew that there was no need to hide anything anymore. She immediately pressed the speak button on the keyboard and said, How did you find out? When her words reached Brother Ju's ears, it was converted into the same voice as the system voice, but at this time, the professor did not deliberately imitate the robotic tone, instead, she spoke in her own voice. Are you Professor Cox? Fong Bujue knew who she was just by the tone of her voice. Or in a higher level of world, you have another name? He did not give the other party time to respond and immediately said, Oh, forget it, you don't have to tell me. In short, the basis for seeing through your fake system is very simple. I did a test. What test? Professor Cox asked eagerly. In the previous 10 minutes, while I was cooperating with your commands, I was using different methods and speed of thought to convey various information to you. Fong Bujue continued, however, you only responded to the information that I said in my heart in the form of language. You did not respond to graphics, logical ideas, or faster thoughts. Just based on that? Cox exclaimed. That's enough. Fong Bujue replied, Indeed, your IQ is very high, and you have the ability to read 10 lines at a glance. Your reaction is also very fast. You can use the My Thoughts feedback from the observation program to communicate with me in real time, and you can answer me fluently. But, in the end, you did not establish a real consciousness connection with me. The photon processor processes all of my neural signals, but you only process speech signals and speech signals that exist in my mind. Based on this, I can be sure that you are not the system. At this point, Brother Ju tapped his temple with his index finger. If the real system is giving me instructions, then, it doesn't even need to communicate with me through voice, because that's too slow. Too slow. Humph. Hearing this, the professor chuckled. Fine. Fong Bujue, looks like you are smarter than I thought. I have underestimated you. It's fine to underestimate me, but, Fong Bujue replied, you and your colleagues have underestimated the system, or rather underestimated SCP-3232. That is a fatal mistake. Oh. Cox's attitude was still relaxed. She asked with interest, How did you come to the conclusion that we have underestimated the system? Ha! Ha 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 ha! At that moment, Feng Bujue laughed madly. After a while, he suddenly revealed a wicked expression. Professor, to be honest, the question that you asked and the tone that you used when you asked it, from my perspective, can only be described as reckless. Hearing that, Cox's expression shifted. What do you mean? She immediately asked. However, just as the question reached her lips, Feng Bujue in the image morphed into white light and was transported away. D. 1 second later, the base's alarm rang, and it caused the professor to shiver. What's wrong? She immediately pressed the communication button on the table and yelled, Quick, report the situation. 10 seconds passed, and no one responded to her. The only sound that echoed in her ears was the endless sound of the alarm. Is anyone there? The professor switched to the public frequency and leaned close to the communicator to ask, What's going on? Another 10 seconds passed, and there was still no response. You've got to be kidding me. Cox stood up. Could it be that everyone in the base has lost their ability to communicate? She shook her head. No, that's impossible. Perhaps there is something wrong with the communication system. With that thought in mind, she walked out of the room. No matter what, since the alarm had rung, even if she could not contact anyone, she had to go through the evacuation process. Buzz buzz. Soon, the professor used her fingerprint to open the electronic door of the office. However, after the door opened, she did not take the first step out. Because there was someone standing outside the door. It was a man in a black suit. He was thin, had a fair complexion, and could be said to be handsome. But for some reason, this handsome man exuded a perverted aura. Even though the lens of the glasses on the bridge of his nose glowed with white light, it could not hide his extremely unfriendly gaze. Hello, Professor. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is... Chapter 1157. The scenario has been completed. Calculating reward. Obtained EXP 560000. Game coins 100000. Obtained equipment none. Missions completed January 1st. Completed special and hidden missions 1. Solved world building SCP observation plan. Time of terror points increase 0. Highest terror points 0%. Average terror points 0%. Your terror rating is Embodiment of Valor. Extra reward obtained. Please choose later. Obtained skill points 10,000. Additional bonus from skill points EXP 10,000. Game coins 10,000. Scenario cleared reward. Randomly draw 4 puzzle card. Hidden quest reward. Randomly draw a perfect equipment. Calculation complete. Please continue. After Feng Bujue returned to the login lobby, the screen before him refreshed with this information. Humph. The 180-second time limit is not even up, and they already chased me out? Brother Ju grumbled under his breath. He did not dwell on what had happened in the previous world because he understood, at that moment, that world had probably been purged by the system or something else. If I'm not mistaken, this so-called 48-hour limited experience is part of Woody's plan as well. Feng Bujue was already thinking about something much further. Since the opening of Thriller Paradise, it has already invaded too many universes, and among them, there have to be some universes that have a strong desire to explore or resist the exploration of the multidimensional space. Even though the system is theoretically a reliable time and space hub, with Woody's personality, he would have to conduct a test before he could relax. At the last stage of the gamble, before the official opening of the Infinite World, Woody had to ensure that the gaming environment was under his control to prevent interference from other universes from triggering an unplanned chain reaction. Therefore, he came up with this so-called limited experience. When the rules for the S2 preliminaries were announced, he had already planned for this step. He used the job of testing for himself as a prize and gave it to the strongest 250 players in the server. Our strength ensures the completion of the test, and the setting of single-player mode only ensures that we are scattered. This way we can explore more universes. In these 7 days, Woody can decide how to deal with those high-risk universes based on our performance in the scenario. For example, the one that I've just experienced. He can already read my character's data and inner monologue. This kind of universe that can even impersonate a system cannot be allowed to stay. Brother Jew stood there and thought for a while. His expression revealed some displeasure. However, he quickly adjusted his state of mind and digested these emotions. Forget it, let him do as he pleases. Okay, I get it now. Brother Jew stared at the item description for a while and said, "The reward is random draw of a perfect equipment, and not random draw of a perfect equipment that matches your current level, so, as usual, I've been scammed." Sigh. He sighed and said, "Based on the equipment requirement of general ability D, characters around level 10 can use this thing. With my current level 50 character, even a piece of excellent equipment that matches my level would be better than this." With that in mind, he picked up the rat mallet and walked toward the disintegrator. But there is one thing that is weird. While moving forward, Fong Bujue mumbled to himself, "The weapon's damage is shown as 1. What is going on?" This was indeed a strange phenomenon because, theoretically speaking, the attack and defense stats in Thriller Paradise were not represented by actual numbers. Since the life points of everything are just a concept of nothingness, what is the point of giving this mallet the attack points? Fong Bujue said as he placed the rat mallet on the conveyor belt of the disintegrator and turned to pull on the lever. But at that moment, wait a minute. Fong Bujue's hand stopped out of instinct. What the F***ck? 1 second later, he quickly let go of the lever and rushed forward to grab the rat mallet back into his hand. So, that's how it works. It was only then that Brother Jew realized that he had actually deciphered the hidden effect of the equipment. The real use of the rat mallet was to test the life points of any unit in Thriller Paradise. Phew! That was close. Fong Bujue gave a long sigh. I almost turned such a sharp item into a pile of molted residue. He picked up the rat mallet again and thought, when I have time, I should find Xiao Tan to test it out. Then, I should be able to tell the life points of a level 50 player based on the percentage of his life points that he has lost. At this point, someone would ask, isn't Fong Bujue able to see through data? Can't he tell the life points of a certain individual? Yes, he could not tell. To put it simply, when he looked at the life points of other players or NPCs, they were all shown in percentages. There was no actual number. But now that he had the rat mallet, that could be changed. After Fong Bujue tested the life points, he could use it as a reference to test the damage of his skills. Then, he could use the damage of his skills to calculate the damage of his weapons and armor. Combined with the application of his zero-time difference calculation, the advantage of information he could obtain in battle in the future would become more concrete. In other words, in Brother Jew's hands, the rat mallet could be used to its fullest potential. Humph. After placing this perfect treasure into his inventory with satisfaction, Fong Bujue chuckled coldly and mumbled to himself, "This must be the legendary effect of losing in love, winning in gambling, right?" For some reason, he used a tone that sounded like he was describing a physical phenomenon to describe the twisted logic of the phrase. Good. Brother Jew roared and announced that he had successfully built a psychological defense called self-deception. He then took out the card deck from his pocket. "Since I'm lucky, I should open this as well," Fong Bujue said as he raised the Joy 4 card. He summoned the previous window and chose the option of continue to exchange for equipment. Now, let me use God's perspective to explain the risks of this card deck. The equipment that could be exchanged with the Joy 4 card could only be one of the following 5 items. 1. Red Combat Umbrella, a legendary composite weapon with high attack and defense. It can summon an extremely powerful Night Rabbit tribe youth to fight for the player for 3 minutes. 2. Purple Combat Umbrella, a legendary composite weapon with high attack and defense. It can be used as a machine gun. It can summon an extremely powerful Night Rabbit tribe youth to fight for the player for 3 minutes. 3. A brown bamboo hat, legendary grade defensive equipment. Defense is low, but it is almost immune to light and spirit damage. It can also summon a powerful Night Rabbit girl to fight for the player. Lasts for 3 minutes. 4. Blank Writing Board, a legendary weapon. It has low attack and is almost useless. However, it can summon a mysterious creature to fight for the player for 5 minutes. Finally, the 5th item was Chapter 1158. After Feng Bujue made his choice, the Joy 4 card deck in his hand immediately turned into white light and disappeared. Since the equipment generation method in the storage room had changed, the white beam of light would not suddenly appear in the room. Brother Ju waited for a few seconds. Seeing that there was no change in his surroundings, he walked back to the drawer by the wall. It should be in here, he muttered as he pulled the iron lock. Indeed, the equipment exchanged from the card deck was also refreshed in here. Clank. When the drawer was opened, the item appeared in front of Brother Ju. When Feng Bujue saw the item, he did not even need to call out the description menu to know the name of the item. Overall, it was a cylindrical object that looked like a doll. Its main body was an orange-red cylinder with a semicircular flesh-colored cap at the top. There were 2 eyes and a mouth painted on the cap. The 2 eyes were standard dead fish eyes. The mouth was a simple horizontal line. On this semicircular head, there were only 2 eyes and a mouth. There was no nose, ears, eyebrows, or any other details. On both sides of this cylindrical object, there were 2 flesh-colored sticks that were about the same thickness as chopstick. These 2 sticks should be the arms of this object. There were also no details. They were just fixed at a 70-degree angle to the body. Name: _we type. Compound weapon quality. Legendary attack? Defense? Attribute: fire, special effect. Its presence is stronger than expected. Its actual use is also greater than it looks. Equip requirement: since it is bound, you can use it, bound after picking it up. A remark: _we is _we. It is neither great nor humble. It really is _we. Feng Bujue picked up the item and said with a smile. The next second, this is a scam. He immediately shouted, You call this legendary quality? Is this really an equipment? Where am I supposed to equip it? Am I supposed to stick the whole stick into beep and carry it away? The description of this special effect was simply baffling. Was the equipment requirements column trying to comfort me? That you've already been fooled, so why don't you let it go? Context wasn't my imagination, right? What's the big deal about the last note? Just underscore we is just underscore we, neither great nor humble. Isn't that nonsense? Ha! Ha! Brother Jew finished the entire sentence in one breath and panted for a few seconds. After venting, he calmed down a little. Phew. Forget it. This is fate. He sighed and put just underscore we into his inventory. This is a legendary grade equipment. It will definitely be useful. It will definitely be useful. Even though he told himself that, he knew in his heart that he had probably taken the risk of exchanging JOY4 cards for equipment, and he had drawn a painful reward. At this point, Fong Bujue had collected all the rewards from the scenario. He looked at the time in real life. It had been 3 hours since he logged in. Considering that the 48 hours of this limited time experience were calculated according to the time in real life, Brother Jew decided to go offline first. These 3 hours could be used to familiarize himself with the new environment. Next, he planned to log in sleeping mode. After all, he was going to play the game anyway. It was much more cost-effective to use sleeping mode to waste the experience time. After disconnecting the nerve connection, Fong Bujue opened the gaming hub and sat up. He sat up and shook his head. Here we go again. Brother Jew had noticed a long time ago that every time he used non-sleeping mode to play the game, in the few minutes after the connection was disconnected, there would be a strange feeling. It was not a feeling of dizziness but a subtle feeling of incongruity. When Fong Bujue was still a normal person, he did not notice this strange feeling. But after experiencing the development of Gu Chen, Qi Ji, Woody, and Simon, Brother Jew was now a man who could even sense the rotation of the earth. Therefore, he could clearly sense this sense of disharmony. Do you feel it? Just as Brother Jew was thinking, a man's voice suddenly entered his ears. What the F***ck? Fong Bujue was shocked. He turned around and saw a man in a suit sitting on the sofa in the living room. I say, how did you get in here? Brother Jew saw that it was Gu Chen and asked, and how come I didn't notice you coming in? I already have the key to your place, Gu Chen replied calmly. Even if I didn't, it would have been easy to get in. He shrugged. As for why you didn't notice me, it's hard to explain. Just think of it as my qigong. Fong Bujue narrowed his eyes and climbed out of the gaming cabin. Looks like you're an expert at invading private residences. No, I'm not. Gu Chen continued. If you enter someone's home without saying anything, that's called invading private residences. If I enter private residences without saying anything, that's called carrying out a mission. Haha. Fong Bujue chuckled drily and replied, then? I wonder, what is the purpose of your visit today, Mr. Section Chief? Hearing this, Gu Chen looked into Brother Jew's eyes and was silent for a few seconds. Then he said, I'm here today on personal matters. After saying this, he raised his head and glanced at the clock on the wall. It's almost 6, let's talk while we eat. Fong Bujue laughed. That's great. Although his expression was smiling, there wasn't a hint of true happiness in his eyes. Which luxurious hotel are you bringing me to eat and drink at? At this moment, Gu Chen stood up and walked towards the kitchen. As he walked, he said, I stopped by the market on my way here. Fong Bujue's gaze followed him and quickly saw the plastic bags on the counter. I told my wife that I won't be going home for dinner tonight. I'll just make do with you. Gu Chen had already walked into the kitchen halfway through his words and picked up an apron to mail to himself. I rarely have the chance to personally cook after marriage, so my skills might have regressed a bit. Come over and help me. Hey! Brother Jew was shocked. You're talking to yourself, invading someone's home, forcing them to buy groceries to cook and even freeloading off of them. Then you're asking the owner to help you cook? Are you going to do it or not? Gu Chen asked back nonchalantly. Feng Bujie thought for 2 seconds, then rolled his dead fish eyes and walked towards the kitchen. AI menu, braised pork ribs with scallions. Gu Chen took the opportunity to reply. Mapo tofu, meat and egg custard, and mushroom soup. As he said this, Gu Chen's left hand had already picked up a large transparent egg-beating bowl, and his right hand grabbed an egg and cracked it. He did a dashing one-handed beating of the egg. Then the egg broke into the bowl. As the egg fell into the bowl, the atmosphere in the kitchen instantly became very strange. After a period of awkward silence, Feng Bujie's mouth twitched. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Gu Chen. That? I want to ask. Your Excellency's culinary skills before regressing, what was it like? Gu Chen maintained his calm attitude and picked up a rag to wipe his hands. He coldly replied, Do you know that instant noodles taste better when cooked than when they're soaked? Nonsense. Who doesn't know? Feng Bujie was shocked. So your so-called skill is the skill of cooking instant noodles. You had the audacity to buy ingredients for 4 dishes and bring them to someone else's house? You even put on such an arrogant appearance and asked someone to be your assistant? Humph. Gu Chen ignored Brother Ju's ridicule and snorted coldly. By the way, when cooking instant noodles, don't put too much water in it. It'll make the texture better. Mention your ass. Aren't we talking about instant noodles? Feng Bujie pointed at Gu Chen. I already said that it's not that amazing of a skill. What's with your self-satisfied attitude? Gu Chen shook his head, still unmoved by Brother Ju's ridicule. Young man, you're too naive. Truly profound skills are the realm of returning to one's original state. Skills like making steamed buns laugh, or making dumplings move, are just claptrap. A man who can't even crack an egg sure dares to say something like that. Feng Bujie's own egg was starting to hurt. Do you think I won't be able to tell that you're bringing up a culinary comic from decades ago to mock me? Don't mind the details, Gu Chen continued. Although my skills are rusty, my awareness won't deteriorate. As he spoke, he picked up another plastic bag. Watch. I'll teach you the method of using soy instead of ground meat to make a special mapo tofu with 6 flavors in one. You just mocked someone else's skill as claptrap, and then you immediately plagiarized another skill. Feng Bujie roared. Do you have to? Oh no. Do you have any shame? 15 minutes later, Let me see. Feng Bujie looked at the steamer on the stove. The meat and egg custard is finally steaming. He then looked at the big frying pan with a lid on the side. The ribs need to be soaked in low heat, there's still some time. He lowered his head and looked at the tofu in the bowl. The tofu should be soaked in water first, wait for the other 2 dishes to be ready, then put into the pot. Thinking up to this point, he turned his head and looked at Gu Chen, who wasn't far away. Chief, is your soy ground meat ready? At this moment, Gu Chen was busy in front of a stove on the other side of the kitchen. Hearing this, he turned around and handed Brother Ju a small plate for tasting food. On the plate there was a small lump of unknown black substance. Try it and see how it tastes, Gu Chen said. Brother Ju immediately took half a step back and asked cautiously, Why don't you try it yourself? Gu Chen's answer was truly shocking. He replied in a very calm tone, It looks disgusting. Feng Bujie widened his eyes and took a deep breath. Then, he maintained the twitching expression on his face and asked in a calm tone, Can you get out of my kitchen? At 7:00 in the evening, the father and son, considering their age, this title didn't seem to be a problem, finally sat down at the dining table. Overall, Feng Bujie made 3 dishes and 1 soup, while Gu Chen wasted an egg and a kilo of soybeans. Since the latter had bought all the food, Brother Ju didn't say anything. I came to find you today mainly to talk about my granddaughter. Gu Chen picked up his bowl and spoke before the first bite of food entered his mouth. Feng Bujie had already picked up his spoon and dug into a mouthful of mapo tofu. I just don't understand. What is she thinking? What exactly is she thinking? I don't know either, but I know that she must be angry, Gu Chun continued. I just don't understand, Feng Bujue said. What is she angry about? His tone inadvertently rose. Everything I do is for her own good. Even if she finds out that she doesn't have the feelings she thought she had for me after the seal is broken, I will also. Stop. Gu Chen interrupted Brother Ju, that's where the problem lies. Brother Ju didn't understand. Where is the problem? I know you're doing it for her own good, Gu Chen continued. You also know that you're doing it for her own good. He paused. No matter from a subjective or objective point of view, the whole world will think that what you're doing is for her own good. At this point, he changed the topic. But, he furrowed his brows and looked at Brother Ju's face. You can't make a unilateral decision on something that is closely related to her and carry it out. Then you can throw the result in the other party's face and say righteously that you're doing it for her own good. Feng Bujue was even more confused after hearing this. Let me give you an example, Gu Chen said. Today, I came to your house and cooked for you. How do you feel? You're doing it for my own good? Feng Bujue gave him a dead fish eye. Before that, meow. Who the hell cooked for me? See, Gu Chen said, you're already upset over such a small matter, let alone something more important. Hey, how come I feel like your example is completely different from the situation that I have encountered? Feng Bujue replied. I am also someone who has been through this before. I have made similar mistakes before. Gu Chen had an incomparable experience in ignoring criticism. No matter how hard Brother Ju complained, he continued to say what he wanted to say. So, today, I am not here to lecture you as an elder, but as someone who has been through this before. I am telling you that you are wrong. I'm wrong? Feng Bujue asked. You're wrong, Gu Chen said. Is it really my fault? Brother Ju asked again. You're so wrong, Gu Chen dragged his voice as he replied. In the next second, Feng Bujue put his elbows on the table and leaned forward. Then you say, I'll go kneel down and apologize. Don't bother with that cheap kneel, Gu Chen interrupted him again. This was beyond Brother Ju's expectations. Then what should I do? Then, Gu Chen used a matter-of-fact tone and gave an answer that even Feng Bujue didn't expect. Do you even need to ask? Just do it the hard way. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.